Chapter 61. Pirate Hunter. Ace, are you okay? Lucci walked up to the drunk Ace and asked. Ugh. Ace covered his head, which was swollen and painful from drinking too much. He didn't raise his head until he heard Lucci's voice. You've drunk too much. Lucci looked at the boy with red cheeks and a strong smell of alcohol, feeling a little helpless. Although I can drink as much as I want because I'm an adult, I can't drink so much. Hey! Lucci, don't worry about the captain. This is a party to celebrate this guy's coming of age, we can't let him escape easily. The other spade pirates said with laughter. That being said, you can't drink too much at once. If you get drunk like this, it will be very troublesome if you encounter an enemy attack. Lucci shook his head helplessly. You just worry too much. Diaz drunkenly patted Lucci's shoulder and said with a smile, our captain is not a weakling. And we have you. Lucci, you are the only kid on our ship now. Dutch Bree said to Lucci with a wink and a smile. Get lost, Lucci laughed and pushed Bree away, if Ace hears you say that, you'll lose your clothes. Hey! Bree pretended to be horrified, approached Lucci again, and begged with a smile, he's drunk. It's fine as long as you don't tell Ace, Lucci. Okay, okay. Lucci smiled and pushed Bree's face away again. He turned and walked towards the tavern owner's seat, waving his hand and saying to Bree with a smile, you watch over Ace. I'll go get something to sober you up. No problem. Bree patted his chest exaggeratedly, but he didn't notice that behind him, Ace, who had been drunk on the table, had stood up and staggered towards the door of the tavern. Bree looked at Lucci's back as he left, shook his dizzy head, turned around and joined the group of people drinking enthusiastically next to him and continued drinking with them, completely forgetting what he had just promised Lucci. When Lucci came out with the sobering drink, what he saw was the completely drunk pirate lying on the floor of the tavern. Lucci looked around and found that Ace was not in the crowd. Could he have gone out drunk? Lucci frowned and wanted to use his observation haki to find someone, but the aura around him was too mixed. He could only walk out of the tavern and look for him in the surrounding alleys. Damn it, Ace covered his throbbing forehead. He was no longer sure where he was. Was he at the beach? Ace tried to recall, but as he thought, his forehead throbbed. If he learned anything tonight, it must be that he would never drink so much again. It was not fun at all. Who cares? Why do people like to do this? He barely supported his body and squinted his eyes to look around. Lucci was not here, and the members of Spade were not nearby. He seemed to have somehow walked into the alley next to the tavern. He remembered that he passed by here earlier when they entered the town. The alley was dirty, and the building he was leaning against was a bit filthy. There was a foul smell in the air that made him feel a little nauseous. His stomach seemed to want to vomit uncontrollably, but since there was no food in his stomach, he could only dry heave. This feeling was not good, as it caused the darkness in his heart to begin to envelop him again, and he could feel his heart becoming increasingly empty. Damn it, he missed home and his brother so much, he hadn't seen Luffy for a year and he had never been away from Luffy for so long. Ace was lost in his confused thoughts until an arm was placed on his shoulder and he realized that he was not alone, there were other people in this alley. The next second his instinct took effect, and Ace turned around, wanting to attack the unknown enemy with a flaming fist. When the familiar flames did not respond to him, he took a breath and realized too late that the alcohol had not only reduced his vigilance, but also made his body abnormally weak, and he could not even use his devil fruit ability. He caught a glimpse of an ugly smirk as he was knocked away, the back of his head slamming into the ground. Ace clutched his hand as the blood poured out of his head. His drunken state did not help the pain, it only made his brain throb more violently. Before Ace could turn over, a hand grabbed his head and slammed it to the ground, again and again. Aren't you a superstar? You don't look that great. Someone standing in front of him sneered. Ace roared, trying to break free. He desperately tried to call upon his flames, but he could find no flames that responded to his feelings. A sharp pain shot through his shoulder and he screamed in pain. He turned his head as far as he could, but the other party held him tightly. When he raised his hand to grab the dagger on his shoulder, his arm felt weak. There was no doubt that the bastard used sea stone to deal with a special ability user like Ace. This was a targeted attack, Ace suddenly realized, which temporarily dispelled the confusion in his mind. That guy knew he would be here. Ace didn't waste any time, he tried to attack the enemy's abdomen with his knee, but was rewarded with a heavy blow to the stomach. Then, regardless of the pain in his head and shoulders, he directly punched upwards to attack the guy's neck. He needed to get rid of his control, he just needed to stand up, he couldn't fight like this. As the attacker thrust the knife deeper into his shoulder, another sharp pain struck him, and he gasped violently, his arms shaking slightly. The attacker took the opportunity to dodge his fist and hit him back with his other hand, then grabbed his head again and slammed it to the ground, pressing his head to the floor with his hand. Do you know how much a captain with special abilities like you can be sold for? It would be a shame to hand it over directly to the Navy, Fire Fist. The man smiled sinisterly. Pirate hunter? He thought uneasily. Let me go, you damn bastard! He roared, and he exploded with all the energy in his body. The impact of fire pushed away the person who was holding him. He would rather die than lose his freedom. The man was pushed a little further away from him. Can't you let me catch you more easily? He sighed. But I will make it easier. Ace quickly stumbled to his feet, sneering at his words, the energy he had burst out earlier now gone from him. He would never drink so much again. I think you need to loosen up your ugly face. The man's expression became even uglier. Ace was ready to fight, he would win, he had been through too many battles where his opponent had the upper hand, he would draw Luffy's dagger if necessary. Another part of him realized that the sea stone dagger on his left shoulder was troublesome, it made his body unable to use its usual strength, and he could not handle the large amount of blood loss caused by this in the battle, which would make this battle more difficult. Chapter 62. Bang! Lucci turned his head and looked towards the alley where the sound came from. Was Ace there? He extended his observation haki to explore, and soon he found Ace's breath there, but there was also the breath of another person. Lucci frowned and quickly rushed towards Ace. He could feel that Ace's breath was very weak. Why don't you let me just grab you? This way it will be easy for both of us. In the long and narrow alley, the black-haired boy hung his arms limply, his hair grabbed by a man with a hideous face, and his face was pressed hard against the wall that was broken by the impact. Go to hell, bastard! Ace shouted angrily. The man's face turned ugly in an instant, and he raised the gun to the boy's head. You have successfully angered me, Fire Fist. I believe the slave trader will give you a good price. The man said ferociously. The man took out the prepared sea stone handcuffs and prepared to handcuff Fire Fist's arm, but suddenly he found a sword energy coming towards him. He quickly released his hand that was suppressing Fire Fist and quickly stepped back, barely avoiding the sword energy. He almost lost his arm. He looked towards the direction of the attack with a ferocious look on his face. Hey! Little devil, I advise you not to meddle in other people's business. Hey! Ace, are you okay? Lucci seemed not to see the man standing next to him, and he quickly walked towards Ace who was lying on the ground. How dare you ignore me? The man's face turned crazy. I will make you die uglier. As he said that, he raised the gun in his hand and shot in the direction of Lucci. Be careful. Ace saw the bullet attacking Lucci. He could feel the breath of the ocean emanating from it, the same as the dagger that pierced his shoulder. That's a sea stone bullet. Lucci sensed the threat the moment the bullet was fired, with a sharp gleam in his eyes. He raised the long sword in his hand, wrapped the sword with armed color, twisted his wrist, flipped the blade, and blocked the incoming bullet, which shot to both sides. Lucci continued to swing the knife in his hand towards the man, but after a moment, he retracted the knife. Then a large amount of blood gushed out of the man's chest, and he looked at Lucci with horror. After Lucci put the knife back into the sheath, he didn't look at the person lying on the ground again, and turned to Ace with an indifferent expression. Ace looked at Lucci with a serious look, and inexplicably felt a little guilty. Although the mask blocked his expression, after spending so much time together, he knew clearly that Lucci was very angry now. Although he didn't know why, he could feel that it was because of him. Lucci looked at Ace's guilty conscience and felt helpless. Why did he always make people worry like this? He didn't know why Ace always regarded his life as the lowest, or even didn't care about his life at all. So no matter what happened, he always wanted to bear it by himself and rushed forward by himself, not caring about his body at all. Just like this time, why did he want to fight alone? They were partners, weren't they? Lucci's eyes softened, he would prove to Ace how much he meant to him. Are you okay, Ace? I'm fine. Ace endured the severe pain from the wound and answered calmly. He didn't want Lucci to see his miserable appearance. Lucci went forward to support Ace and checked his wounds. When he saw the sea stone dagger on Ace's shoulder, his eyes trembled for a moment. He took a deep breath, placed his left hand on the dagger, endured the weakness caused by the sea stone, held the fingers holding the dagger with his other hand, quickly took out the dagger and threw it away, then took out a first aid kit from the shadow space. Fortunately, because he was often injured in the forest, he had a habit of preparing a first aid kit in his shadow space. Ace looked at the first aid kit that suddenly appeared in Lucci's hand with some surprise. Where did he get it from? Suddenly I remembered that when they first met, Lucci seemed to have demonstrated this ability, but he was only focused on eating at the time and didn't notice it. Lucci put a piece of disinfectant cloth on Ace's shoulder, and then applied the hemostatic herbs he carried with him to the wound. After bandaging the serious wounds with bandages, he silently took Ace's hand, put it on his shoulder, and supported Ace and walked silently towards the tavern. Why are you here? Ace finally couldn't help but speak to break the silence between the two. Of course I came out to find you, you drank too much. He knew what he was thinking. Lucci sighed, and then said seriously, Ace, listen, I will never abandon you. Ace fell silent after hearing what Lucci said. He initially thought that they had left him alone and gone. Ace, drink this first. Lucci gently shook Ace's shoulder with a glass of sobering drink in his hand. You should have a good rest. I will make arrangements for the crew. Lucci said softly, looking at Ace's tired expression. It had been a few weeks since the drunken incident, and during that time Ace could feel the crew's eyes following him. He wanted to snap at them to allay their concerns, but he knew they were just feeling guilty for losing him that night. They were very drunk that day, and Lucci's moving of them did not wake them up. It was not until the next morning, when they woke up groggily and saw the wounds on his body, that they realized that it was their mistake that caused their captain's injury. Ace didn't think too much about it. He didn't think it was their fault, but he knew that Bree felt guilty. He thought it was his fault. He promised Lucci to look after the captain, but he didn't do it. He didn't know what to do to make their guilt stop, so he pretended not to see their looks, hoping the crew would come out of it on their own. Lucci looked at Ace's departing back and sighed helplessly. He stopped Deuce, who wanted to follow him, and said, leave him alone for a while. But Deuce hesitated. He is the captain and he is very strong. You should believe in his strength. There is no need to worry so much. Lucci said helplessly. But the captain is too reckless and needs someone to stay with him, Deuce explained. Don't you believe in Ace's strength? Lucci said in a low voice. Of course I do. Deuce retorted. Then what are you worried about? He is the captain, and it is his duty to protect you. You don't need to worry about his behavior just because he successfully protected you and got hurt. He doesn't need you to worry like that. You just need to trust him. Lucci said in a serious tone, and Ace has his pride. Your obvious worries will cause him trouble. He won't regret his actions and decisions. As a member of the Spade crew, you just need to follow him and trust his decisions. Deuce was a little shocked by what you said. He never thought that their worries would cause trouble to Ace. Thinking carefully about the atmosphere on the ship recently, Deuce drooped his shoulders in frustration. It was because they didn't trust their captain enough. Lucci, how do you know the captain so well? Deuce asked puzzledly. Obviously, they should have spent more time with the captain, but Lucci knew Ace better than them. I don't know either, it's just a feeling. Lucci smiled. He didn't know how to describe that feeling. Sometimes it seemed subconscious, as if he knew Ace would be like this. Ace jumped off the boat and walked towards an alley. He wanted to avoid his crew for a while. He walked through the alley and came to a small town not far from the port. It was a safe enough place. He thought he could relax for the night. There were no big groups in this town. Basically, it was the locals who lived here. The locals also looked very friendly. For Ace, it was a good night. In this tranquility, he could calm down some of the things that happened recently. Ace was sitting in a restaurant eating. Have you heard he's in the area? Who? The 4 emperors, red hair. Ace stopped eating with his fork. He seemed to hear people at the table next to him discussing red-haired Shanks. He stopped eating and listened silently to the information about red-haired Shanks. How do you know? The red-hair pirates are on a nearby snow island. Someone saw the ship of the 4 emperors red hair on the coast of that island, but they seem to have entered the highest snow mountain. As long as we don't enter the town, otherwise the residents of that town will, alas. If only our island was in Whitebeard's territory, one of the men sighed. Whitebeard. Isn't he a pirate? Why do you think so? Whitebeard is also one of the 4 emperors. I heard that if he wants to become the Pirate King, then he will be the next one to become the Pirate King. He is known as the strongest man in the world. I heard that when he was young, his strength was comparable to that of the Pirate King Roger, the man said in awe. The strongest man in the world. Ace thought about this sentence while eating. Lucci looked at the bar in front of him, pushed the door open and went in without disturbing anyone. He walked up to the bartender, ordered a glass of wine and some food, and found a seat in a corner and sat down. Chapter 63. He ate what he had in his hand while listening to the discussions around him. The tavern was the best place to gather information. Have you heard? Several countries in the New World have been liberated by the Revolutionary Army, but it seems that the countries liberated by the Revolutionary Army are all under the jurisdiction of the Navy. Lucci thought about what he had just heard. Dragon should be acting with the Revolutionary Army. If he wants to find him, he must first find someone from the Revolutionary Army, and he must find someone at a high level. Otherwise, it will be useless. Are they all liberating islands under the jurisdiction of the Navy? In this case, it seems that he needs to leave the Grand Line. It seems that he needs to talk to Ace. After leaving the tavern, he walked through a long alley, and his vision suddenly widened. There was a gravel road in front of him, and some houses were located not far away, making him realize that this was another smaller town. He walked on the gravel road leading to the town, thinking about the information he had just heard. He looked at the town in front of him. The town was very quiet, and he walked on the streets of the town. Stop! Catch that guy who dine and dine! Several men in chef uniforms were chasing a black-haired boy. Ace was dodging everywhere from behind. Suddenly, he seemed to see something, his eyes lit up, and he ran quickly in one direction. Lucci didn't know why he had a bad feeling, as if this tranquility was about to be broken. Lucci! Suddenly he seemed to hear Ace's voice. He looked in the direction of the voice in confusion. It was indeed Ace. He was running towards him. Lucci looked at the person chasing him from behind Ace and felt helpless. This guy was eating and running again. Thank you, Lucci. Ace grinned and touched the back of his head sheepishly. Lucci helped Ace pay for the meal to the owner of the restaurant, and said helplessly, "Why do you eat a free meal every time you go to an island?" He. Ace grinned. Where are you going next? Lucci and Ace walked side by side on the streets of the town. Ace was a little confused, but he still responded seriously, "My goal is to reach the top of the ocean, and the 4 emperors will be my next target." Lucci looked at Ace's serious expression and nodded in support. Red-haired Shank's ship is on the nearby island. I'm going to go find him. Ace grinned, seeming very happy. Red-haired Shanks? I remember he was one of the 4 emperors. Lucci was a little surprised. He knew Ace would challenge the 4 emperors eventually, but he didn't expect it to be so early. He reminded worriedly, "Are you ready to challenge the 4 emperors now? Isn't it a little too early for us? Our goal is to be at the top. It would be a shame if we can't defeat the 4 emperors." Ace pushed his hat down with his right hand and said in a low voice, "We will have to face each other sooner or later. It's just a matter of time. Don't you believe in my strength?" "Of course not." Lucci sighed and said seriously, "We are not strong enough yet, and the crew is not ready. We can't fight the 4 emperors yet. But I want to see how powerful the 4 emperors who are now standing at the top of the world are." Ace's mind suddenly popped up what those 2 people said about Whitebeard being the strongest man in the world. "Not now. At least wait until we are ready." Lucci's tone turned stern. Okay, this time we're not looking for red hair just to challenge him." Ace suddenly laughed and avoided answering Lucci's question about when he would challenge the 4 emperors. "What's that for?" Lucci was confused. It was impossible for Ace to go find the 4 emperors on purpose and not challenge them. "Because he is my brother's savior. Now that I have come to the New World, I need to go say hello to Shanks." Ace grinned. "Is that so?" Lucci was relieved, and then he thought of another thing. "Ace, there is something I want to tell you." "What?" Ace asked confused. "Do you remember that I came to the New World to find something?" Lucci said. "Yeah." Ace nodded. Lucci came to the New World to find something, and that's why he boarded his ship temporarily. Temporarily? Suddenly he thought of something and asked anxiously, "Do you want to leave?" "No." Lucci looked at Ace's panic and added helplessly, "I came to the New World to find the Revolutionary Army. To be more precise, I am looking for the leader of the Revolutionary Army. Leader of the Revolutionary Army. Ace was somewhat familiar with this title, but he couldn't remember where he had heard it. Well, I have something I want to confirm with him. I found out his whereabouts and plan to track him down. Lucci added, but he is not on the Grand Line. Spade's sailing route is fixed and it is easy to attract attention, so I plan to look for him alone and will be away for a while. Is that so? How are you going to find us then? Ace was a little disappointed. He knew this was the best way. It would not affect their route and would not delay Lucci's plan. I'll solve it as soon as possible. Lucci said with a smile, I need to make a piece of your life paper later, so that I can find you quickly by following the life paper. Life paper? Ace asked doubtfully. This can show the owner's life and health status, and the torn paper will point in the direction of the owner. Lucci explained. So when do you plan to set sail? Ace asked. Tomorrow, I need to get there as soon as possible, Lucci responded. Oh, well, we'll set sail tomorrow as well. Ace said with a smile. Goodbye, Lucci. The Spade Pirates members shouted while waving. Take care. Lucci waved to them and then boarded the merchant ship that had been planned. Come on, Lucci, the Spade Pirates welcome you back anytime. Ace shouted with a smile. Ace, remember not to be too impulsive. Lucci looked at Ace and said with a smile, then raised a hand in front of his chest and threatened with a smile, if I come back and find that you have done something stupid, you are done, Ace. Ace scratched his head awkwardly. Don't worry, Lucci, we will keep an eye on the stupid captain. Deuce and Bree joked. Hey! Ace shouted in protest beside him. Lucci couldn't help but laugh as he watched them playing around. Captain, what are we doing here? Deuce struggled forward in the snowstorm. He covered his hood that was blown by the cold wind and asked Ace who was walking in front. I'm looking for someone. Ace heard the voice and turned to look at Deuce in the cold wind, and responded with a smirk, his name is Shanks, he has red hair and 3 scars on his eyes. Shanks! Shanks! Deuce shouted in panic, are we going to fight the 4 emperors now? Deuce tried to stop Ace, but Ace did not stop. He turned around and continued to move forward against the blizzard. Dias, what do you think of me? Ace said in a low voice, but with an unstoppable momentum. The goal is to be at the top. What will it be like if I can't beat the 4 emperors? What do you think, can you surpass him? Surpass the Pirate King? Deuce seemed to see the flames on Ace's body igniting into flames that shot up into the sky in this winter blizzard. He looked at Ace's firm belief and was speechless for a moment. The members of the Spade Pirates were inspired by Ace's domineering words and became excited instantly. They were ready to follow the captain and showed the momentum to fight to the death with red hair. Ace suddenly laughed and turned to look at the Spade's members behind him. He is my brother's benefactor. I want to go and say hello. Ace looked at the Spade's members who were relieved and couldn't help but grin. He changed the subject. But it's been a long time. It depends on his mood. I don't know what will happen. Everyone just breathed a sigh of relief, but suddenly became nervous again. Chapter 64. But no matter what, I want to meet him, red-haired Shanks. Ace covered his cowboy hat and walked forward against the blizzard, adding with a smile. The Spade Pirates. A deep voice sounded in the dim cave. The legendary super rookie wants to greet me. The figure said, picking up the sword at his side, quietly waiting for the challenger. Ace looked at the man who was about to fight him, and quickly waved his hands to explain, no, that's not what I meant. You are my brother's savior, so I want to meet you and thank you again. Luffy's. Shanks reacted quickly and smiled happily, hey, are you Ace? You're growing up so fast. Come and have a good chat with me. Ace smiled happily. There were lively sounds coming from the snowy mountains. The bright bonfire in the cave continued to burn. The red-haired pirate and the Spade Pirate happily held a bonfire party around the bonfire. Red Hair and Ace sat among the pirates, the sounds of pirates drinking and talking could be heard all around them. Ace excitedly told Shanks about his and Luffy's childhood adventures, and Shanks happily listened to what Ace told him about Luffy that he didn't know. Really? That guy is still clamoring to become the Pirate King. Shanks said with a smile on his face while holding a glass of wine. It's just like his catchphrase. Ace thought of Luffy's usual obsession with One Piece, and responded with a helpless look. Then Ace showed a mischievous smile and said, well, although I'm sorry to say this, Luffy, who made me go to sea before him, so I will be the pirate king. Hey? Really? Shanks asked curiously. First, I have to make the entire sea area recognize my strength. Ace said in a firm tone. Oh, how do we do this? Shanks looked at Ace's confident expression and responded seriously. Defeat the man who is considered the most powerful in the world. Ace said seriously, this was his plan. Take off Whitebeard's head. Shanks added to Ace's words. Shanks looked a little solemn. Ace left too fast and Whitebeard left them too early, but he did not say any words of comfort. Thank you for your hard work, masked staff officer. You are heading towards the king without any reason. The aimless journey is always accelerated by anxiety. Shanks turned his head to look at Deuce beside him and said in a low voice. Deuce was very surprised that Shanks could see the problem at a glance. Ace, I suddenly want to ask you a question. You and Luffy are sworn brothers who drank sworn brotherhood wine. Since the hero Garp is your grandfather, who is your father? Shanks turned his head and looked at Ace and asked. Ah, that guy, I don't really want to mention him, sorry. Ace thought of that guy with a look of disdain, but felt a little guilty for not being able to answer the question raised by Shanks. Shanks was silent for a moment. The guess in his mind might not be answered for the time being. Is that so? That's fine. It's hard work for you to get here, Shanks said. Then he thought of something and asked with a smile, except for Luffy, you three should be the same age. Did you go to sea separately? Ace was silent after hearing what Shanks said. He felt a little sad, but then he suppressed his sadness and responded, yeah, they all went out to sea first. Shanks looked at Ace's expression and his heart sank. What happened? Ace looked at Shanks' serious expression. He didn't want to mention it, but he also knew that Shanks needed to know what happened. He told Shanks what happened when he was a child. Shanks was silent for a long time after hearing what Ace said, so long that he didn't notice that Ace had left. Boss. The atmosphere in the Red Hair Pirates was a little depressing. Beck. Shanks called out in a low voice. Okay, I understand. Beckman took the cigarette out of his mouth. The Navy will feel the wrath of the Red Hair Pirates during this period. Sabo. Why are you messing around again? Kerr pulled Sabo's cheeks and yelled at him, why are you always messing around? I'm so worried about you, but you just act on your own and end up having Haku and I clean up your mess. That was a heavy blow. Sabo retorted, rubbing his painful cheek. I had planned it all, and the mission was successfully completed. Hey! Kurlaw looked at Sabo angrily. Sabo looked at Kurlaw's angry expression and decided not to anger her. Lucci was leaning against the wall and accidentally saw this good show. He was speechless about his behavior of peeping at the couple's play. He decided to leave before they noticed he was there. Although he was a little concerned about the man named Sabo, he didn't think much about it. Dad, I'm so hungry. The little boy cried, holding a man's hand. I'm sorry, son. The man hugged the skinny boy in pain. They had no food left. Looking at the villagers around him who were also starving, the man couldn't help feeling despair. Hey, everyone, a pirate ship has been washed up here. A villager shouted. Great, there is food here, we are saved. What about these pirates? Tie them up. Ace woke up from his coma and looked at the hungry villagers without moving. After the villagers had eaten all the food, he untied the rope on his body and stood up. The villagers were horrified to find that the pirates had easily untied the ropes that bound them. Looking at the pirates coming towards them, they couldn't help feeling despair, and they knew they would definitely take revenge. Ace looked at the despair on the villagers' faces and pursed his lips. He walked up to a child about 5 years old, put on a bright smile and said to her, Are you full? You should have some dessert next. The girl stared blankly at the pirate in front of her, feeling a little overwhelmed. Ace put the hat on his head and asked with a smile, Where can I get some dessert? I'll go get some. The villagers stared at the pirate's back in amazement. They were rescued by the pirate. In a few days. Ace looked at the straw in Xiao's hand with some curiosity. Xiao, what are you doing? Brother Ace, we are weaving straw hats, Xiao responded happily. Ace stared at the straw hat in Xiao's hand in a daze, wondering what Luffy was doing now and whether he was training well. Brother, do you want to learn? Xiao asked with a smile while looking at Ace. Hey! Is it okay? Then please give me more advice, Xiao. Ace touched the girl's head and responded with a smile. Ace carefully weaved the straw hat in his hand. Weaving requires carefulness and endurance. Since it is made of straw, and Ace is the user of the flame fruit, every time Ace is about to finish weaving, he will always be burned by his own flames. But after learning, he quickly mastered this skill. He just needs to make sure that he does not burn the straw while weaving. In this way, Ace stayed in this village for a few weeks, learning to weave straw hats with the villagers. Ace, are you leaving here soon? Xiao asked seriously while looking at the straw hat that Ace was weaving. Yeah, so I have to finish weaving this before then. Ace responded with a smile while weaving a straw hat. Ace. Take me to the sea too. The girl sat next to Ace, looking up at him seriously. Xiao, you are only 5 years old, right? Ace said with a smile, we will come again, after we become a bigger pirate group. Can I be your partner then? Xiao said happily. Next time you come back, if you become a charming female ninja, we will take you away. Ace said with a smile while touching Xiao's head. Ace. Is it necessary to emphasize the word seductive? The Spades members laughed and teased their captain. Then we have a deal. Xiao said happily. Oh no. Many of our children have been captured by Kaido's men and taken to Onigashima, a villager shouted in panic. Let's go to Onigashima and bring the kid back. Ace put down his woven straw hat and shouted to the Spade members, then said with a smile, it's time to take Kaido's head. Oh! The members of the Spade Pirates were inspired by Ace's words and shouted excitedly in an instant. Chapter 65. We are here to find Kaido. Ace said loudly as he looked at the man jumping down from the roof. Ace! Deuce shouted to Ace. Ace used his fire fist to repel the surrounding enemies, and then said to Deuce and the others, save the children now. I understand, leave it to us. Deuce responded, and then quickly entered Kaido's palace with the rest of the Spade members. What a tenacious creature! Ace said through gritted teeth as he looked at the girl rushing towards him, then fought back. After a few rounds, Ace and the girl began to lose strength. Hey, who are you? Tell me your name. Ace shouted while attacking. Hey, you first. The girl fought back unwillingly. I'm Ace, and I'm here for Kaido's head. Ace's fist collided violently with the girl's weapon, and then the two of them separated and retreated to both sides. Ace, stop it, we've found the person, let's go back. Deuce shouted at Ace who was fighting with someone. Have you seen Kaido? Ace turned to look at Deuce and the others. I didn't see Kaido, and there were no other cotters inside. Deuce responded. What? Ace was confused. My father and his subordinates went out on an expedition, and there is no cotter left on this island now. The girl shouted beside her. Dad! Ace said in surprise. What? Kaido's daughter? The Spade members shouted in shock. Even if it's not my job to protect this island, seeing how much damage you've caused, it's time to stop, the girl shouted angrily. Ace looked at the shackles on the girl's hands and thought. Ace, are you okay now? We plan to return directly to Wano country. We want to send these abducted children back to their homes. Deuce said when he saw Ace seemed to be still planning to fight. Thank you. The little girls kept bowing and thanking the Spade members. Yeah, Deuce, you guys take the child back first, I need to end this battle. Ace stared at the person he had just fought with and said to Deuce. I see. The rocket remains on the coast, Ace. Deuce said, and then he took the Spade members and the children back to the ship. I don't believe that someone as strong as you is not even the captain. Ace said seriously, let's end this battle. My name is Yamato, and I'm going crazy from being bored here. If you want to fight, I'll accompany you to the end. Yamato said as he raised his weapon and attacked Ace. Try this. Ace attacked Yamato with all his strength, and then the two were pushed aside by the impact of the attack. Why? Why don't you go out to sea when you are so strong? Ace asked in confusion. Even if I want to go out to sea, I can't. How can you understand my feelings? Yamato lowered his head and said unwillingly, I can't go out to sea and have to stay here all the time because of him, my father, Kaido. Why is my father him? It's all his fault. Is it all my father's fault? Ace gritted his teeth and said angrily. He thought of Roger, and his whole body was burning with fire. He shouted angrily to Yamato, Yamato, we can't choose our own father. It's one thing that your arms are locked, but since you hate your father so much, why do you want to trap your own heart here as well? What did you say? Yamato said in shock. Yamato, what do you want to do? Ace said loudly at the confused Yamato. Yamato looked at the dragon-shaped sculpture that symbolized Kaido's authority, and thought of the days when she was trapped here. For the first time, she felt rebellious and wanted freedom. Then she swung the weapon in her hand and smashed the statue with all her strength. Me too. I want to go out to sea for adventure. Live freely like Lord Odin. Yamato turned and shouted at Ace. That's more like it. Ace smiled and punched the dragon statue. This is my warning to Kaido. As the sun sets, the sea in the distance is dyed orange by the afterglow of the setting sun. The sky and the sea become one, making it a beautiful oil painting. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. Ace and Yamato were drinking and chatting happily on a tall rock. Ace, tell me about your adventure. Yamato said excitedly, she wanted to know more about the outside world. Oh, that'll take a long time. Ace smiled and took a sip of the wine in his hand. Ace and Yamato talked like this until late at night. Hey! Tell me what the world outside is like. There should be a lot of young people going out to sea for adventure now. Yamato said curiously. Young man, there's a guy called Kevin or something, he's very popular now. Ace supported his cheek with his hand and thought, of course no one can compare to me. I heard that some dangerous elements have appeared in various sea areas. Kid in the South China Sea, Luo in the North China Sea, and Becky's in the West China Sea. Of course the most dangerous one among them will go out to sea again after a while. Ace said excitedly, that's my brother. He will stir up a storm. How many times did you mention your brother today? Yamato couldn't help but complain when he saw Ace's excitement. I can do this as many times as I want. Don't complain and listen to me. Ace shouted dissatisfiedly. Yamato. Ace boarded the rocket, raised the life paper in his hand and said to Yamato with a smile, you'd better take it well. We must meet again, Ace. Yamato waved the small piece of life paper in his hand and shouted to Ace. Ha ha ha, of course. Ace picked up the life paper in his hand, waved his back to Yamato, and then used fire to start the rocket and sailed towards the depths of the sea. Big guy, I want to see Whitebeard. Ace said loudly as he looked at the fishman who was blocking him. I won't let a murderous kid like you go to see my father, said the fishman, looking at the aggressive young man in front of him. Captain, that guy is Jinbei. The Spade member reminded. Hey, 7 warlords of the sea? I'm so lucky. Ace said with a smile. Although I am not a member of the Whitebeard Pirates, please let me be your opponent out of courtesy. Jinbei assumed a fighting stance. Ace raised his flaming fist and attacked Jinbei. He spent 2 months wandering around the islands in the New World, constantly tracking the location of the Revolutionary Army. The latest clues brought him to this island, which hid a large slave trading organization, and the king of this country seemed to be involved in it. Just thinking about this organization, he wanted to destroy them all. However, if he wants to find the Revolutionary Army, and if the information is reliable, waiting in this city should be the best choice. People of all types from various islands often gather here, and he may be able to collect more information here. He had arrived here for a few days, and he could feel that many strange people had come to this city in the past 2 days, but he didn't know if they were the ones he was looking for. Chapter 66. Lucci walked into a pub, walked through the tables and chairs in the middle and walked to the counter. He greeted the bartender and ordered some food. The bartender motioned for him to wait a moment. He leaned against the bar, quietly observing the people around him and listening to the various conversations coming out of the pub. Do you believe it? A drunken voice rang out. This has to be fake, it can't be real, another voice responded. It's true. I heard from a friend of mine that the Revolutionary Army is hiding in this city, and they plan to take action tomorrow night. The drunk man looked around carefully and spoke softly. How do you know? The man responded in surprise. My friend works in the prison. The king has caught a traitor who has provided the king with the plan of the Revolutionary Army. I heard that the guards have already set an ambush for them. Lucci listened quietly in the back, wanting to know more information, but they didn't seem to have more information he wanted to know. He pondered over what to do, and finally decided to sneak into the palace and wait and see. This is an ordinary kingdom on the Grand Line, but it hides a huge human trafficking organization. The king of this country is also involved in it, and the king of this country has made this country a trade transit station. As a middleman, this country has a huge network of relationships. Sabo's mission this time is to sneak into it to obtain the transaction list in the king's hands and find the revolutionary comrades who suddenly disappeared on the island. Sabo, how's the situation over there? The situation is a bit unusual. We haven't seen the king's guards until now. Sabo hid in the corner and responded to the voice in the den mushi with a serious expression. I have now entered the interior of the outer wall tower and have a feeling that something bad is going to happen. Kurlaw said carefully while hiding in the shadow of the box. Sabo, where are you now? Kurlaw said worriedly, Haku and I have successfully reunited. I'm on my way to the dungeon of the palace. I need to save someone. Sabo ran quickly in the underground passage leading to the dungeon. This place gave him a sense of danger. Sabo slowly stopped running and quickly hid in the corner of the wall to avoid the guards coming towards him. Why did he feel that the deeper he went, the fewer guards there were? Sabo waited until the two soldiers left and continued to walk inside. He had entered the depths of the dungeon, but there was no one here. Sabo vigilantly observed the movements around him. He sensed a faint breath in the innermost cell and he quickly walked inside. A black-haired boy with a weak breath was hung in the cell. The boy's body was covered with marks of beating and blood. His eyes were closed and only the slight rise and fall of his chest proved that he was still alive. Sabo looked at the hanging boy, the scene made him breathless, and a picture seemed to appear in front of him, in which a smaller black-haired boy was also hanging in the air with injuries all over his body. He hurried forward to rescue the boy. Bang! Bang! Sabo instantly turned around to look in the direction of the sound, only to see huge flames coming out of the passage he had just walked through, and continuous explosions. He was trapped. Was this set up specially for him? Sabo looked around, looking for a way to leave. The flames were getting closer and closer to them. He stared at the wall behind him, behind which was a room. He stretched out his hand, bent his fingers into a hook shape, wrapped them with armed color, and then inserted them into the wall with force. As he moved, spider web-like cracks appeared on the wall with him as the center. Sabo quickly pulled his hand back, and the wall collapsed instantly, revealing the room behind the wall. He grabbed the boy and hid in it. The explosion just now caused the palace to collapse. Sabo quickly left here holding the boy. The sound of the explosion had attracted all the king's troops. Sabo held the boy in his left hand and waved the pipe in his right hand to repel the soldiers who kept pouring in. Sabo found a small corner to avoid the soldiers who were chasing him. He calmed his breathing, put his hand on the boy and checked his injuries. The child was very weak. Sabo checked the boy's breath and found it was very weak, almost stopped. Sabo dropped his shoulders. He was a little sad. He knew he couldn't help him. He's here, catch him. Sabo dodged the attacks coming towards him, he dodged quickly, he grabbed a soldier's head, exerted force with his fingers, crushed it expressionlessly, then attacked the next one, and the crushing battle ended quickly. He wiped the bright red blood from his fingertips, looked around to make sure there were no more survivors, and casually threw away the dirty handkerchief in his hand. He walked towards the boy. Although he already knew the result, he still tried to feel his breath again. Sabo lowered his head in disappointment. The boy didn't make it after all. He gathered his thoughts, told Klar the outcome of the matter, and then hung up the den mushi. Ignoring the frantic shouting of the person on the other end, he prepared to leave. Hello! A voice suddenly appeared, and Sabo stopped in his tracks. He quickly turned around and attacked in the direction of the voice. Lucci didn't expect him to attack suddenly, and his body instinctively retreated. He quickly drew out his knife and blocked the attacking pipe and arm. After several rounds of fighting, Lucci and Sabo retreated and stared at each other. Sabo broke the silence between the two and asked coldly, "Who are you?" "Hello, my name is Lucci, I mean no harm." Lucci knew that the person on the other side had calmed down, so he put the knife back and waved his hand to indicate to the person on the other side that he posed no threat. "You are not the king's man." Sabo's eyes flashed. The name sounded familiar. This person was very powerful. If he was an enemy, it would be a variable in their plan. "No, are you from the Revolutionary Army?" Lucci looked at the person opposite him and asked, "I have something I want to ask the leader of the Revolutionary Army." "I don't know the leader of the Revolutionary Army. Why are you looking for me?" Sabo looked at him warily. This man was very powerful. If he was an enemy, he would become a variable in their plan. Lucci felt a little annoyed as he looked at the increasingly vigilant expression on the other side. It seemed that he should not have directly stated his purpose, but he inexplicably felt that the person on the other side could be trusted. He thought that he might need to change his plan. I have no ill intentions. I just want to talk to him about some personal matters. You can tell him that it is related to his relatives. He thought of the scene just now. This person is very powerful and must be a cadre of the Revolutionary Army. Then he added, I know you are from the Revolutionary Army. With your ability, you should be a cadre of the Revolutionary Army. Sabo looked at him in shock. He had never thought that Long actually had relatives. If it was true, he would need to report this to Long. Sabo said seriously, I need to confirm with Long. I need you to stay on this island for the time being. I'm temporarily staying in a hotel in town. You can find me there. Lucci said with a smile, and then the figure disappeared from his sight. Sabo watched the other person's figure slowly retreat back into the shadows. His body dissipated bit by bit until it completely disappeared into the shadows. Sabo was a little shocked. He was actually a devil fruit user. Chapter 67. He had already demonstrated his abilities to the other party. He thought that even if the Revolutionary Army didn't care about what he said, they would definitely be wary of a powerful person with strange devil fruit abilities, and this person was related to their leader. In this case, he would definitely take their conversation seriously, Lucci thought happily, and now he just had to wait. Lucci was walking on the path leading to the port. There was a pirate ship docked on the coast. The pirates on it were moving things and moving constantly. He looked at the scenery in the distance. The sun was setting, and the sea water seemed to be dyed orange by the orange-red sunset, forming a golden-red sea. Lucci looked at the sky that seemed to be burning with flames. Ace seemed to appear in front of him with a smile on his face. He didn't know how Ace was. Lucci's mind moved, and Ace's life card appeared in his hand. He looked down at the life paper in his hand, and the smile on his face froze instantly. The life paper was burning, from the previous palm size to the current palm size. Lucci's expression became solemn. Ace was in trouble. It's been 5 days and there's still no winner. If the fight continues, both of them will die. The members of the Spade Pirates looked worriedly at Ace, who was still fighting. They were exhausted just from watching the battle. Ace was breathing heavily and staring at Jinbei opposite him. This was the strongest opponent he had encountered since he went to sea. Even if he tried his best, he could not win. Jinbei kept gasping for breath and staring at Ace. He no longer had the ability to attack. Jinbei's eyes went dark and his strong body could no longer support him. Ace breathed a sigh of relief when he saw Jinbei falling down. He finally won. Then Ace also fell down exhausted. Ace relaxed and lay on the beach to rest. Suddenly there was a loud noise on the sea. Ace turned his head and looked at the sea. A huge whale battleship jumped out of the sea, rushed towards the coast, and slowly docked on the coast. Ace struggled to stand up and stared at the sudden giant. He already had a guess in his mind. It's Whitebeard. Diaz looked at the fluttering pirate flag with a serious expression. A dozen powerful pirates stood on the deck, looking at them expressionlessly. A majestic figure slowly walked forward from the back of the deck. The powerful pirates on the deck automatically gave way to the figure and stood on both sides behind Whitebeard. Who wants to take my head? As you wish. I will be your opponent. As the voice fell, a huge figure jumped down from the deck, and the earth shook and everything turned upside down. A majestic momentum swept the whole place. Under this fierce and domineering aura, the Spade Pirates were almost annihilated. Only Deuce and a few others were still struggling to hold on. However, as soon as Whitebeard exerted his strength, Deuce and his men were completely defeated in an instant. Ace looked at Whitebeard with a serious expression. The moment he saw Whitebeard, he knew that it was impossible for him to defeat him now, but he would not back down. However, he had to make a choice. Fire net. Ace raised his left hand and summoned countless flames. The hot flames rose up and formed a huge wall of fire behind Ace, isolating him and the Spade members on both sides of the battlefield. Captain! What are you doing? The Spade pirate shouted in shock. Run away! Ace shouted at them, then turned and stared at Whitebeard. Lucci quickly jumped off the pirate ship. He felt Ace's breath on the island. He looked at the life paper in his hand. It had become smaller, as if it was about to burn out. Lucci moved quickly in the direction of the life paper. Suddenly, a sharp domineering aura penetrated his body. Lucci's heart tightened and he quickly ran towards Ace. There was an extremely powerful breath near Ace. What's wrong? Are you going to back down now? Whitebeard thought he was going to run away, and looked at the flame boy in front of him with some displeasure. I hope you can let my companions go. In exchange, I will stay here. Ace looked at Whitebeard firmly, his face full of determination to fight. You are quite arrogant, young boy. The white-bearded man raised the corner of his mouth. Ace rushed towards Whitebeard's huge body, but was knocked down by a blow. Ace lay on the ground in embarrassment. This is the man who is on par with that guy. Ace gritted his teeth and tightened his fingers, grabbing the sand under his hands. He supported his upper body with his wrists and barely stood up. Ace covered the wound that was bleeding and gasped. He raised his head and stared at Whitebeard in front of him. Ace! You, big idiot, what are you doing? Suddenly a voice came through the huge wall of fire. Ace turned around in shock. Lucci. Whitebeard also looked in the direction of the sound curiously, but he didn't pay too much attention to it because there was something more important now. Be my son. Whitebeard stretched out his hand to Ace and said with a smile. What a joke! Ace shouted in shock and anger, and then used all his strength to launch a final attack on Whitebeard. Dias, take everyone to the boat first. Lucci said solemnly. He didn't expect it was Whitebeard. No, we have to stay here. We can't abandon the captain. Deuce retorted angrily. This is the captain's order. Do you want to disobey the captain's order? Lucci drew his sword. He needed to pass through the wall of fire. The Whitebeard pirates have a large number of powerful captains. We have no chance of winning in a head-on fight. You guys go to the ship and prepare to set sail. I will find a way to take Ace away. I understand. He can only trust Lucci now, believe that he can take Ace away. Deuce has called all his companions away, and they want to go back to the ship. This is their only chance. After Lucci and the other members of the Spade Pirates left, he swung his sword at the wall of fire and used his sword energy to cut a gap in the wall of fire, allowing him to pass through quickly. As soon as he entered the fire wall, he saw Ace being knocked to the ground by Whitebeard. Lucci quickly stepped forward and caught Ace's body. Lucci looked at Ace who had lost consciousness, his heart sank, and he quickly checked him and breathed a sigh of relief. He just fainted. Who are you? Little kid. Whitebeard looked at the person who suddenly rushed in. Lucci slowly stood up and walked slowly towards the Whitebeard pirate. He adjusted his hood to hide his face in the darkness. He raised his head to look into Whitebeard's eyes and said sincerely, Hello, Captain Whitebeard. My name is Lucci, and I'm Ace's partner. I'm sorry for Ace's provocation. I hope you can let me take him away. Ha ha ha, I won't let go of the brat who provokes me easily. Whitebeard laughed, so you want to fight me too? I'm happy to accompany you. I wonder if your strength is as strong as the legend says. Lucci said provocatively. Cool. Whitebeard laughed, then his face darkened. What a self-righteous brat. Let me show you what I am doing. Lucci took the initiative to attack, and continued to attack Whitebeard with fierce slashes. Before he was attacked, Whitebeard moved in surprise and a huge explosion was heard in the direction of the slash, and a huge crack appeared in the ground. For a moment, Lucci really hoped that this attack would cause damage. However, when the dust cleared, Lucci could clearly see that the huge pirate didn't even move his feet. He had no time to think, and quickly approached, turning his wrist and continuously attacking Whitebeard with powerful sword moves. Even so, his attacks were all blocked by Whitebeard. Is this the strength of the strongest man? The attack came so fast that he barely had time to notice that Whitebeard had used his devil fruit power before it hit him. More blood flowed from the wound he was hit by, and he could feel his ribs broken from the force that had just hit him. He hit the sand hard, causing his vision to go dark for a moment. When his vision returned, he was half crouching on the beach with a look of pain on his face. He used his knife to support himself and stumbled to his feet, his body shaking from the attack. Lucci covered the bleeding wound on his abdomen, took a deep breath, and then felt the pain in his chest. His face turned pale because of the pain. He took a staggering step forward. With a thought, he received the message from the shadow. He couldn't help but smile and relaxed. His goal was achieved. Chapter 68. It's time to say goodbye now. Lucci looked up at Whitebeard and smiled. Whitebeard frowned as he watched the little kid slowly disappear. Is he a devil fruit user? Dad, what are you doing? A tall, thin man with lean muscles among the Whitebeard commanders asked puzzledly. The boy disappeared inexplicably, but the dad didn't seem to intend to chase him. Dad, the fire fist is gone. Marco sighed heavily. Ha ha ha, this kid is interesting. Izzo, Jaws go take care of the villagers and prepare supplies. Thatch and Teach go intercept the fire fist's ship. An inexplicable light flashed in Whitebeard's eyes. Marco. I understand, Dad. Marco smiled. It seemed that they would have a new brother joining them. Marco immediately took off and soared into the sky, leaving blue flames behind him, his sharp eyes searching the ground. Lucci covered his wounds and hid behind a rock to avoid the search of the Whitebeard pirates. He needed to bring Ace back to the ship as soon as possible. His new ability was unexpectedly useful. After entering the fire wall, he created a shadow substitute to hide in Ace, and he went to attract the attention of the Whitebeard pirates, making them focus their eyes on him. Then, he let the lurking shadow take Ace out quietly while their attention was attracted. It was also thanks to Whitebeard's underestimation that he did not activate his observation haki, otherwise they would not have been able to escape so easily. Yo-ee! A cry attracted Lucci's attention. He looked up at the sky and saw a big blue bird circling in the air. He had never seen such a beautiful bird before. It had blue feathers all over its body and was surrounded by blue flames. A few strands of golden feathers dotted its tail feathers. Even on the island where Rayleigh took him to train, where there were all kinds of strange animals, this type of bird had never appeared. However, the big blue bird seemed to be targeting them. Looking at the big blue bird flying towards them, Lucci frowned and stared at it warily. The big blue bird was covered in blue flames, and a tall human figure slowly emerged. The man had messy blonde hair and wore an unbuttoned purple jacket that showed the tattoo on his chest. He had a dagger on his waist and grey-blue knee-length pants. He had a bored expression and his eyes were lazily half open, but there was a sharp light in the depths of his eyes. Lucci assumed a fighting stance and stared closely at the thin man opposite him. Lucci swallowed nervously. He knew him. He had seen him next to Whitebeard. This guy was very strong. Give me the fire fist and come back with me, Yoi. Marco said slowly to Lucci with a bored look on his face. Impossible, I won't hand Ace over to you. Lucci attacked him. The Spade crew is already on our ship. Marco sighed heavily, responding to the attack while trying to persuade the boy on the other side. What responded to him was an increasingly angry attack. Marco was a little helpless. He didn't really want to fight with the people who were about to become his family, and he was already injured, but there was no other way. Let's end it as soon as possible. Ugh! The sound of a huge explosion reached Ace's ears from afar, pulling him out of the darkness of his coma. He struggled to open his eyelids, his eyes were blurred, trying to understand everything he saw. Ace saw Lucci lying not far away, his vision blurred for a moment. When he saw clearly again, he saw red. Lucci was lying flat on his back, pale and motionless. A strong and tall figure stood beside him, blocking Ace's sight. He didn't know who he was, but someone had hurt Lucci, which made him more conscious. Ace pushed himself up, forcing himself to stand, flames erupting from his shoulders, back, and legs as he stood up, panting. Get away! He roared, stumbling closer to Lucci. A muscular, tattooed chest appeared in front of Ace's blurry vision. He stood between Ace and Lucci. Ace vaguely realized that the person standing in front of him was the captain of the first team of the Whitebeard pirates. He knew who the person who had just stood next to Lucci was. Get away! Ace panted, staring at him with half-closed eyes. Get away from him! Marco's eyes widened in surprise, and he raised his hands in a reassuring gesture. I won't hurt him. He's seriously injured. I'm going to take him to the ship for treatment. Suddenly he felt dizzy, everything went dark before his eyes, and he felt a sharp pain in his chest. His body fell unconsciously, and a pair of firm hands quickly grabbed his body, stopping him from continuing to hit the ground. Marco held his twitching brows and looked at the two people who had completely fainted. He felt helpless. They were indeed the ones chosen by his father. He could already imagine the chaotic scene on the ship that would follow. Late at night, the cool sea breeze blew through Ace's hair, and a sharp pain woke Ace from his coma. He slowly opened his eyes and looked at everything around him that was unfamiliar, the unknown world. He knew that his adventure was over. He looked up at the sky filled with dark clouds. He had failed, and he had lost everything again. Ugh! When he woke up again, his consciousness recovered very slowly. His head was occupied by pain, stimulating his desire to wake up more and more strongly. When Ace finally opened his eyes, he took a few minutes to process his surroundings. He was in the infirmary, much larger than the Spade and with noticeably better facilities. He was lying on a soft, comfortable bed, his hands and arms were wrapped in thick bandages, his chest and legs were wrapped in bandages. An foreline extended from his right arm, and Ace felt himself shiver uncontrollably, a chill running down his spine. Ace forced himself to sit up, then ruthlessly pulled off the infusion tube in his arm. He glanced around and saw Lucci lying unconscious on the bed next to him, his face pale. Ace was a little anxious, as he didn't know what Whitebeard's purpose was. He moved slightly and groaned in pain. The movement just now affected almost all the wounds on his body. He paused for a moment, then walked towards Lucci. Just as he was about to pull out the tube from Lucci's body, a voice came over, "I advise you not to touch those. They are for your treatment. The nurses will go crazy if you pull them out." Ace stopped what he was doing, blocked Lucci on the bed, turned to look at Marco, his eyes gloomy. "What do you want?" "Dad wants to see you, come with me," Marco said boredly, then turned and walked out. Ace looked at Marco's back as he left, a little hesitant. He looked back at the unconscious Lucci. He would not let anyone hurt him. Ace dragged his injured body and followed Marco's footsteps. They came to the deck. Whitebeard sat on a huge chair. He was connected to several intravenous devices and some medical equipment. Ace stood in front of Whitebeard, looking at him warily, his body tense, ready to be attacked at any time. Whitebeard looked at the young boy in front of him, took a sip of sake, then smiled and said, "I have a suggestion for you." "What?" Ace looked closely at the expression on Whitebeard's face, trying to discern his intentions, but the old pirate was hard to read, as there were no flaws on his face. "I hope you and Lucci can carry my flag and sail on the sea," Whitebeard said seriously. "No way. I can't join your crew. Lucci won't join you either." Ace refused, then snapped, "Where are my crew members?" "They are on another ship." Whitebeard ignored Ace's refusal tone, then said with a smile, "Don't you want to challenge me? You can stay here. As long as you are on this ship, you can challenge me at any time." Ace was silent. He didn't say anything. He decided to accept the offer. He would defeat him. He would not go after his crew before defeating him. He couldn't let their anger towards him threaten his crew. "I accept your proposal, but you have to ensure the safety of my crew." Ace demanded. "Lucci is not my crew member. I hope you can let him leave." "Karalala." Whitebeard laughed and drank the sake in the bowl, then said, "Your crew will be safe, but Lucci is just like you. I also want him on board. You can discuss it with him when he wakes up." Ace returned to the infirmary, somewhat confused, and laid on his back, covering his face with one arm. Lucci better wake up soon. Chapter 69. Lucci woke up suddenly. The room he was in was very quiet. His eyes were not yet open, and he was using his observation haki to sense everything around him. Ace was lying on the hospital bed on his left, sleeping soundly with many bandages on his body. They were on a huge ship with many powerful people on the ship. They seemed to be on Whitebeard's ship. Were they kidnapped? But they were neither shackled nor locked up, and their injuries were treated well. He was not sure what the situation was now. He raised his hand and touched the mask on his face, feeling a little relaxed. Then he sat up, enduring the pain from the wound. He walked carefully to Ace and gently shook his body, trying to wake him up. Ace muttered, then suddenly woke up, his eyes immediately looking at Lucci who was shaking him. When he saw that Lucci was awake and looking at him in confusion, he breathed a sigh of relief, smiled and quipped, "Is Sleeping Beauty finally awake? You can still joke. It seems everything is fine." Lucci responded with a smile. "Ah, we were on Whitebeard's ship, and we were kidnapped by them." Ace looked at Lucci's eyes widened in surprise. "Whitebeard invited us to join them, all of us, including you and me. Why?" Lucci was a little surprised and confused. He thought they would be killed or locked up, but he never thought it would be like this. "I don't know." Ace shook his head, then said firmly, "I will stay on this ship for the time being and challenge Whitebeard. I will definitely defeat him." Lucci sighed, somewhat helplessly, and said with a smile, "I will go with you. I need some time to collect information. If you want to leave, I will find a way to take you away from here." "You don't have to be like this, Lucci." Ace hesitated. He didn't want Lucci to be implicated because of him. Then he said firmly, I won't run away. I will defeat Whitebeard. I believe you, but you don't have to worry about me. You don't know my strength. No one can hurt me. Lucci said with a smile, and then said seriously, besides, aren't we partners? No matter what, we have to understand the situation here. Lucci said with a smile. Ace looked at Lucci and smiled for the first time in a while. Hey, are you guys okay? A voice suddenly came, and Lucci and Ace subconsciously looked in the direction of the voice. A tall man was wearing a light blue high-end uniform, black pants that reached his calves, a black belt around his waist, and brown shoes. Looking up, you can see the man's yellow headscarf, and then he has a black goatee around his chin, and a suture scar around his left eye. He has an orange-brown pompadour hairstyle, and he is holding a tray in his hand with some food on it. Who are you? What do you want to do? Ace asked warily. Hey, don't be nervous. I think you need food. The man said with a smile, I am Thatch, the captain of Whitebeard's 4th team and the chef of this ship. I will not let anyone feel hungry on this ship. Get away, I don't want anything from you. Ace said angrily. Although he accepted Whitebeard's proposal, it didn't mean that he would get along with them in a friendly manner. His goal was to assassinate Whitebeard. Ace. Lucci pulled Ace's clothes to stop him, then he looked at Thatch at the door, gave him a polite smile, and refused, Thank you for the food you brought us, but we don't need it for now. Dinner time will come in 2 hours, so don't miss it again. Thatch smiled in understanding, and then reminded, the cafeteria is on the other side of the deck. Okay, thank you. Lucci responded to him politely. At least on the surface, he didn't want to conflict with them. After Thatch walked away, Ace looked at Lucci and asked in confusion, Why are you so polite to him, Lucci? We need to avoid conflict with them for now, at least until I figure out this ship and find a way to leave, Lucci explained. But we are going to assassinate their captain. Sooner or later, they will be unable to bear it and attack us. Ace sneered, the kindness they show now is just hypocritical, used to confuse us. Well, I understand what you mean, so I will investigate in the dark. Lucci nodded in agreement, but they don't know my abilities yet, so I will avoid conflicts with them and show my abilities in front of them. Well, what's the plan, Lucci? Ace looked at Lucci and asked about his plan. It was always Lucci who made the plans between them. I will observe this ship in the dark, find the location of the Spade members, and then find a way to take the Spade members away. Ace, you just go and do what you want. There is still some food in my space, and I can take some of their food without them knowing. Lucci said to Ace thoughtfully. Try not to have too much contact with them. We can't trust any of them. Ace said seriously, we will leave immediately after Whitebeard dies. Well, you better be careful, Ace. Whitebeard is not that easy to kill. Lucci said with some concern. Trust me, Lucci, I will do it. Ace said firmly. Lucci knew he couldn't stop Ace, but he would find a way to help him. Ace felt like he was cursed. From having the worst bloodline in his veins to his current predicament, his luck had always been the worst. The only good thing in his life was having his brother. Every part of his body ached, he felt the pain in his hair, he leaned his back against the wall, his head buried in his knees. It had been 2.5 weeks, he had been trying to kill the old pirate, but his efforts had always failed. He had lost count of how many times he had tried to kill him, but he heard them say he had tried to kill the old pirate 50 times. He leaned against the wall and banged his head against it several times. He felt embarrassed. He had failed many times. Should he say that it was a good thing that Lucci was not here? He didn't want him to see him in such a state of failure. He recalled what Lucci said when he left last week, Ace, the Spade members are all on one of the ships Whitebeard is sailing on. My fruit ability can help me hide in the shadows. I need to follow the Whitebeard pirates to various Whitebeard warships. I will come back to find you after I understand the situation of the Spade members. A week has passed. He covered his forehead in some pain, suppressing the worries in his heart. Ace pulled his hair hard with both hands, revealing a painful look. No one on this damn ship regarded him as a threat. In less than 9 months, he traveled through the East China Sea paradise and entered the New World. He was also invited by the Navy to become a Shishibukai. Although he suspected that his grandfather was related to this, he also successfully defeated a Shishibukai. At the same time, he was a captain a natural devil fruit user with powerful attack power, and had a basic understanding of haki. He was really not weak, damn it. But in front of these guys, he felt like a kid playing pirates with them. He felt like he was 10 years old again, dreaming with his brothers about what they would become, only, he was 18, and instead of being surrounded by his brothers, he was surrounded by strangers he didn't like or trust. He hadn't seen his crew since he was brought aboard the Moby Dick, and after Lucci left, he was alone. Luffy was right, loneliness was worse than any harm. Chapter 70. Hey, Marco. The captain of the first squadron of the Whitebeard pirates turned to face his brother, already knowing what he was going to say. I haven't seen the Fire Fist since his last attempt to assassinate Dad. Thatch frowned. Damn it, he's not in the room we gave him and it's past dinner time and the other kid hasn't shown up in a week. Marco sighed. When Lucci and Fire Fist acted together, their movements were still regular, and judging from the disappearance of the food, they had enough food to support them, so they were not worried about their physical condition. But since Lucci disappeared this week, Marco guessed that he probably ran away. Although they didn't understand how he left without alerting them, the boy almost never slept. He only stole a small amount of food from the warehouse where they stored food and caught the rest. He continued to attack their dad at least 3 times a day. Although the child had not attacked anyone other than the dad, anyone who tried to get close to him would be intimidated by him, and he had always refused treatment, which made them very worried about the child's physical condition. Why don't you use your observation haki to find him? Marco asked with his eyes downcast. I don't want him to think we can find him anytime, Thatch replied with a shrug. He might not be happy about that, and I love my hair and don't want to lose it. He proudly reached up and patted his ridiculous pompadour. Marco sighed and held out his hand. Thatch smiled and handed the food in his hand to Marco. Thanks, bro. Yeah. Marco replied helplessly. With his observation haki, it didn't take him long to find Fire Fist. The kid was hiding in one of Moby's lockers. He knocked on the door. Fire Fist, I'm Marco Yoi, I have something for you. Marco looked at the door that had been closed and couldn't help but sigh. I know you're in there, Yoi. I don't think you want Thatch to come looking for you because you haven't eaten and I don't want to be harassed by him. I think I've made it clear to you. I don't want your food. Fire Fist's voice came from behind the door. He'd made it clear that he didn't want anything from them except his father's head, but wanting and needing were 2 different things. I know what you mean, Marco replied. Then why are you here? Fire Fist's voice was full of suspicion. Do you believe it's because I don't want you to faint suddenly, Yoi? Marco was a little helpless. He tried to explain, we are not here to arrest you. Yeah, I'm gonna kill your captain, and I know what that means, idiot. Marco rubbed the bridge of his nose, somewhat helplessly, and asked a question he had always wanted to know, why do you act as if you hold a grudge against the world, Yoi? Only silence answered the question, and Marco sighed again. I'll leave the food here, at least take it after I leave, okay Yoi? He carefully placed the plate by the door and left. Ace waited until he could no longer hear footsteps, then waited another 2 or 3 minutes before he opened the door a little bit, and sure enough, a bowl of food was waiting at the door. Honestly, he just wanted to throw the bowl of food back in the bastard's face, but his growling stomach stopped him. Damn, as annoying as he found them, he had to admit that Thatch was an excellent cook. Why do you act like you hate the world? Ace stared down at the food, as if he was back in the bar when he was a kid, seeing countless faces in countless bars, countless laughs, constant mockery. He clenched the fork in his hand tightly, and the fork kept turning red and hot in his hand. How can you not hate the world when it hates your existence? Thatch whistled as he walked down the hall, holding in his hands a covered plate of breakfast, which contained the sea king meat that he had specially cooked, as he noticed that the boy had started to eat the meat before touching the other food on the plate. Unlike the night before, he was confident that he could deliver food to Ace himself. The morning Ace was much gentler than the afternoon Ace, and he was confident that his precious hair would survive this encounter. Thatch knocked on the storeroom door and quickly moved away from the doorway to avoid any possible fire. What on earth do you want to do? Ace roared loudly. He really didn't know why they were trying so hard to irritate him. I brought food, Sachi said with a carefree smile. Ah! Ace said angrily, are you idiots deaf or something? I told you I don't want your food. No, we listen to what we want to hear. Thatch replied with a shrug, ignoring his anger. After a while, the room became quiet and Thatch knocked on the door again. What? Ace yelled. Can I open the door? Thatch asked. Whatever. Ace sighed and said weakly. Thatch didn't waste any time, he didn't want to give the boy a chance to change. This was the first time Thatch had looked at the boy carefully in a week, and looking at the injuries on his body, he almost backed away. His tan skin was covered in scars, his face was covered in freckles that made him look very young, dark circles gathered under his eyes, he looked like he hadn't slept properly in weeks, he seemed to be in worse shape than when he first arrived on the Moby. Here you go. Thatch placed the food in front of him. Ace looked at the plate very suspiciously. Thatch sighed. Kid, I think we need to get rid of the idea of poison. I'm not a child. Ace roared angrily. Okay, so how old are you? Thatch shrugged. Ace kept his mouth shut and answered with silence. He would not reveal any of their personal information. Thatch sighed, knowing he wouldn't answer, which was what he always did, and sat down in front of him. I didn't say you could stay. Do you really want to be alone? Thatch asked, not understanding why he should be alone. You didn't even mention anything about being with or meeting up with your old members, and you know what, pushing everyone away isn't going to solve anything. Sachi waited for a while, but still got no response. He sighed and stood up. Put the plate there. I'll come get it later. As Thatch reached the door, Ace finally spoke. Don't take it personally, I shut everyone out. He paused for a moment and continued. It's easier this way. Thatch looked at Ace, he didn't know what he should say, so he said nothing. After Thatch left, Ace sat there, he leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. He didn't lie, he really rejected everyone, even though he cared about them, they didn't know him very well, Lucci might be an accident. He would rather keep it that way, knowing full well what vicious looks people would get when they knew his secret. The only people he trusted completely were 3 people, his brothers, and even though they knew whose blood he had in him, they still loved him. Boom. Wow. What are you doing? It's so early in the morning, be careful. Snort. Ace stared at the old pirate who had easily knocked him away even in his sleep. He covered his bleeding nose, ignored the shouts of other white-bearded pirates around him, and turned away. Hateful. Damn it, Fusa covered his head which was aching from lack of sleep. He was awakened at 5 o'clock in the morning by the sound of the kid being thrown through 6 walls. For the past 2.5 weeks, the Whitebeard pirate was awakened every day by the sound of the kid smashing the walls when he was thrown out. It was his department's job to repair any damage, and in fact he really wanted to ask the little guy to fix the parts he broke himself. Chapter 71. Man, I have to say, I kind of hope this kid can wait until the sun comes up before taking action. Thatch said with a smile as he put the coffee in his hand on the table. Fusa looked at the coffee on the table and thanked Thatch in a low voice. He took a sip of the coffee to relieve the symptoms of his headache. Then he complained to Thatch, "Don't get me started, Thatch. 6 walls. I need more materials. Before this guy came, we didn't need to buy materials for 3 whole months. He has only been here for 3 weeks, and Moby has repaired more walls than in the year before he came." Thatch patted his shoulder comfortingly. "I should go prepare breakfast for the kid. I don't want him to faint from hunger on our boat." He whistled and walked towards the kitchen. Fusa looked at Thatch's back and felt a little strange, but when he thought that there were more things that needed to be repaired, his mind suddenly ran out of ideas. He wailed and started banging his head against the table. Thatch whistled as he walked through the hall, waving to the crew members who greeted him. Soon he came to the boy's door, but what was different from the usual silence was that he seemed to hear someone talking inside. He didn't want to pry into his privacy, even if it was unintentional. He knocked on the door, then moved sideways to stand on the other side of the wall to avoid any flames that might suddenly appear. "What do you want to do?" Ace's voice came from inside. Unlike before, his voice was not angry. "I'm here with food," Thatch said loudly in a cheerful tone. Ace sighed deeply, feeling helpless about the behavior of the Whitebeard pirates. He looked at Lucci who had just returned, feeling somewhat helpless, and then said to Thatch outside the door, "Leave it at the door, I'll take it." Lucci found the helplessness on Ace's face somewhat amusing, thinking of the conversation he had just heard on the ship. It seemed that not only Ace was making the Whitebeard pirates feel difficult, but Ace also felt at a loss about their goodwill. Thatch was pleasantly surprised by Ace's friendly response, and was a little curious about what had made Ace's mood improve. But anyway, he was willing to accept their food, which was a good sign. He carefully placed the plate at the door and left. Lucci waited for a while, and when Thatch's footsteps had completely disappeared, he brought in the food plate from the door, pushed it in front of Ace, and motioned him to eat it. He looked at the bruises and dark circles under Ace's eyes with some helplessness. Ace looked at the food on the plate. Although he didn't want to accept it, in order not to worry Lucci, he picked up a piece of meat and chewed it. Ace, don't tell me that you have been refusing to accept their food since I left. Lucci covered his forehead, feeling a headache over Ace's stupid behavior. Hey! You know we can't trust them. Ace looked at Lucci's drooping mouth and said guiltily. Lucci shook his head helplessly, and then told Ace what he had found out in the past few days. The members of Spade are now scattered on various ships. They have made the choice to stay. They have joined teams that match their abilities and have integrated well. Now they are fulfilling their corresponding responsibilities. He looked at Ace and added, they look good. Ace, what is your decision? Ace paused with the spoon in his hand, then continued to eat the food in his hand. I know. Whitebeard's crew told me about their situation. No matter what, it was me who caused this situation. I will defeat Whitebeard, wash away this shame, and take them back. Lucci looked at Ace and said, after observing for some time, I can feel that the Whitebeard pirates have no ill intentions. Even though you, Ace, have been attacking their captain, Whitebeard, and his crew have not been angry or retaliated. Moreover, they did not raise any concerns about this during the time I disappeared. Their previous proposal should be serious. Ace lowered his head and was silent for a moment, then said, there's no way I can join them. Lucci looked at Ace and shook his head helplessly. He could see that Ace was no longer obsessed with killing Whitebeard, he was still going on just because he was too stubborn. He wouldn't admit that he liked it here, he just needed a little push before making a decision. Ace leaned against the railing and sighed, enjoying a moment of peace and breathing in the fresh air. He didn't know what time it was, but he knew this action was stupid. It was too early, only the duty officers were still awake at this time, but they were more focused on the sea and would not pay attention to what was happening on the deck, so he had a moment. Lucci was already fast asleep. Due to his daytime narcolepsy, he had slept for several hours. He couldn't stay in the room doing nothing. He was thinking about what Lucci had said during the day. Ace sighed. He knew who he was challenging. Whitebeard was already a rival to the Pirate King before he was born. He was one of the 4 emperors, just like Shanks. Even without counting Whitebeard's own strength, his crew was huge, and each commander was very powerful. He could feel that each commander had enough power to kill him alone, and then there were his allies. Yet, he had always been stupid. He wanted to prove himself so much that he ignored all the warnings and plunged in. He could feel the gap between them, but he was unwilling to accept that they would be so far apart. Be careful, Yoi. He knew who was talking, Marco, the captain of Whitebeard's first team. He had just heard his footsteps, he just didn't want to pay attention. If you fall at this time, the people on duty may not see you. Marco walked to Ace and leaned his back against the railing. None of your business. Ace said coldly. I'm just expressing my concern for Yoi. I don't need or want your damn concern. Ace gritted his teeth and said angrily. Silence spread between them. Marco sighed, thought about his words, and said softly, I think you should have felt the power of Dad. Marco faced his angry gaze calmly and continued, after all, he is a powerful pirate who has existed since before the Great Pirate Era. It is almost impossible for you to defeat your father with your current experience and ability. Ace snorted in mockery. He knew what he said was right, but so what, he would beat him, so what's your point? Marco shook his head. I have a suggestion. Since you don't plan to leave, why don't you follow us? You can help us deal with some challengers, become stronger in the battle, and then challenge Dad. In return, we will provide you with food and medical care. I think only in this case will Dad formally accept your challenge. Ace thought silently and did not respond to Marco's words. What do you need, Yoi? Marco asked calmly, interrupting his thoughts. For you to trust us. Ace was stunned for a moment. To be honest, Ace didn't know himself. His brothers had won his trust. There was no exact reason or a specific moment for him to believe them, he just did it. So he shrugged and said, what the hell, how should I know? Ace looked at Marco and asked seriously, why? I want to take your captain's head, so why? I want my dad to have more fun playing. Marco replied with a smile. An angry symbol slowly appeared on Ace's forehead, and then he turned and left. Marco smiled as he watched Fire Fist leave. He knew that the boy had accepted his proposal. Dogura. Dogura. Did Ace appear in the newspaper today? Luffy asked loudly to the newspaper that Dogura had just received. No. Dogura shook his head at Luffy. Luffy said disappointedly. What's wrong, Luffy? Chi patted Luffy's shoulder and asked. Since the last report that Ace was going to challenge Whitebeard, there has been no news about Ace in the newspapers for 2 months. Luffy must be worried about Ace. Dogura explained. No, Ace is very strong. I believe he will defeat that man. Luffy said proudly. Chapter 72. Boom. Lucci looked in the direction of the explosion. A shell hit the Moby and Ace, who was sleeping nearby, was blown away by the impact of the explosion. Hey! Ace! Lucci shouted in the direction where Ace flew, and suddenly a wisp of blue flame flew towards Ace. It's Marco! Hey! Where is this? Ace shouted in shock as he looked at the strange ship. We are on the enemy ship that is causing trouble, said Marco, standing on the broken hull. Don't talk nonsense. How come I'm here when I was sleeping so well? Ace roared angrily, then looked at the pirates below, pinched his finger joints, and flames came out of his hands. These are enemies. Marco, the captain of the Blue Regenerating Flame team. One of the pirates asked doubtfully. Who's that red flame next to it? A new crew member. Another pirate responded. Ace listened to the discussion of the pirates below, Fire Fist. He attacked the pirate who said he was a new crew member. Hurry up and get rid of them and go back to that ship. After Ace knocked down the pirates in front of him, he said to Marco who had been behind him. Marco knocked down the pirate who attacked from behind and responded with a smile, how reliable, Yoi. Boom. Ace dodged the sudden attack by leaning sideways. A huge figure slowly appeared. Ace looked at the knife spinning in the opponent's hand and touched the bloodstain on the side of his face. This guy's knife is so fast, and he will definitely use domineering power. Indeed, he is capable of challenging Whitebeard. Ace looked at the enemy opposite him, tore off his shirt and assumed a fighting stance. If we can't even deal with pirates of this level, then taking Dad's head is a fantasy. Marco said with a smile. But that's all. Ace curled his lips slightly into a wicked smile, and then attacked the enemy opposite. The battlefield is indeed the best place to improve your abilities. Ace said with a smile as he looked at the fallen pirate. Come on, Ace. Lucci said, pulling Ace's arm. You go first, I'm not that hungry. Ace tried to break free from Lucci's hand. No. You didn't go with me yesterday. Haven't you accepted Marco's proposal? Come on. Lucci grabbed Ace's arm and pulled him away. No, you go first. Ace tried to persuade Lucci. Come on. Lucci didn't care about Ace's struggle. He knew he just didn't know how to deal with it. Thatch turned around and saw a surprising scene. Lucci dragged a reluctant face through the restaurant door. Thatch blinked. He hadn't seen the man who used fire since the battle about 2 days ago, and it was always Lucci who brought him food after dinner. Everyone else in the restaurant stared at the 2 new faces. Hey! Thatch shouted loudly, attracting the attention of the 2, and then said with a smile, do you need food? Sit here, you can take as much food as you want. Oh, thank you, Thatch. Lucci pulled Ace to sit opposite Thatch, and then thanked Thatch. Lucci placed 2 plates full of food on the dining table and pushed one of them in front of Ace, motioning him to eat it. Ace sighed and picked up the cutlery on the table, tucking into his food at a slower pace than usual. He could feel the curious looks from the Whitebeard pirates, but now that Lucci was here, Ace felt himself let down his guard and ate as much as he wanted, which was already a lot. Thatch's eyes kept flicking between Ace and Lucci, his eyes growing wider and wider. See that new guy? In the dining room of the Moby Dick, a white-bearded pirate said in surprise to the person sitting opposite him. I'm going to challenge my dad today too. The pirate on the other side bit off a piece of meat and said with a grin, I wonder how long this will last. But the newcomers are improving very quickly. It seems that the duels are no longer one-sided. One of the pirates said with a smile. Isn't this quite exciting? The pirate on the other side said excitedly, but this is the nth time you have challenged me. Is this the 68th time? The pirate sitting at another table said with a smile. Yeah, I wonder how many times you plan to challenge us before joining us. If you haven't succeeded in the challenge 100 times, then join us. Sachi approached the person who was speaking and said with a mysterious smile on his face. Hey! Captain Thatch! The pirates who were speaking just now exclaimed. Marco walked into the kitchen and just heard Thatch discussing with other brothers about the Fire Fist ace. Hearing Thatch spreading the rumor that the Fire Fist would join after 100 challenges, it was obviously Thatch's own decision. In order to avoid someone complaining to him about the destruction of his precious hair in the future, he thought that he needed to remind someone, Thatch, what are you doing, Yoi? Hey, Marco! Thatch turned and walked towards his brother. Want some coffee? Thank you. Marco rubbed the bridge of his nose. What are you doing, Yoi? Spreading rumors. Hey! Of course not, I just wanted to add fuel to the fire. Sachi said with a careless smile, then put the coffee in his hand in front of Marco. Marco took a sip of the coffee on the table, which relieved some of the headache caused by staying up all night grading documents. The fire that burned your precious hair. Of course not, don't curse my precious hair. Marco. Thatch subconsciously protected his hair, then said with a smile, after Lucci came back, Ace has begun to trust us slowly. At least he has begun to trust us and is willing to accept our food and help, and to fight with us. We have already won the trust of one of them, and I believe everything will be resolved in the end. The 100 challenges are the number and the goal. Ace will soon fully trust us and then join us. Are you talking about Lucci? Why do you say he trusts us? Marco was a little surprised. He didn't know why Thatch thought so. He could feel that Lucci, like Ace, seemed to have something stopping them. But at least Lucci did trust them more than Ace. Although they didn't know where he went during the time he disappeared, they could feel that since he came back, Lucci no longer refused their food and help, and sometimes he would drag the angry Ace to greet them and then go to the cafeteria to eat. I met him on the deck last night. When I approached him, we started chatting. Although he refused to reveal some personal information, when I asked him when Ace planned to give up the assassination plan, he looked at me and then answered my question. You know, I was very happy. I didn't expect him to respond to me. Thatch continued, he told me that Ace couldn't beat Dad because Ace had stopped trying. He was too stubborn. He was still doing this just because he was unwilling to accept it and didn't want to admit that he liked it here. He needed a little push. And you did all this, Yoi. Marco rubbed his forehead. Although he felt a little headache about his stupid brother, he was still a little happy to hear this. Hey, that's a good plan, Marco. Thatch retorted. Marco shook his head helplessly, then walked towards the kitchen exit, waving his hand with his back to Thatch. I still have some documents to deal with, Yoi. Chapter 73. Now it's time for the moon kick to appear, which is about to fall from the sky. Ace looked at the enemy who suddenly disappeared in confusion. He could only hear the voice of someone talking in the air. Ace jumped back hastily to avoid the giraffe's head that suddenly attacked vertically, and shouted in shock, "You call this a kick? Because it's my skill, no one will find fault with it no matter what I call it," said a pirate who looked like a giraffe in a white suit and tuxedo proudly. That's true. Ace's left hand was blazing with flames, and he said indifferently, then leaped forward high and attacked the giraffe. The pirate looked at the attacking Fire Fist and laughed sarcastically, "I forgive your natural negligence. Take my move, Kudzu Leaf Stab." Looking at the incoming attack, Ace suddenly remembered what Thatch had said a while ago. Ace, you have always been inclined to use the Devil Fruit ability that you are good at. This is the harm of self-study, you have to expand your ability range. He calmed down and used his observation haki to sense his breath. Ace used fire to accelerate and dodge the pirate's kick. His right hand ignited a lot of fire and punched the giraffe pirate's body. What kind of random stabbing is this? In an instant, the pirate in animal-like giraffe form was completely defeated by Ace, and fell to the ground in the ruins with burns all over his body, his life or death unknown. Thatch looked at this wonderful scene and came behind Ace with a grin, saying in a mean way, "Not bad for observation haki, thanks to my perfect suggestion." Then he came to Ace and winked at him and said, "Thank you, there's no need to say thank you." Tisk. Ace turned around and left speechlessly, walking towards Lucci. Wow! Damn it, I'm stabbed! A big guy with a face full of black stubble shouted in panic. "Are you being careless again, Teach?" Thatch said with amusement, shaking his head. Whitebeard Territory, Ford Waiting Island. The Moby Dick sailed to an island governed by Whitebeard, and after dealing with some pirates who came to the island to cause trouble, they had a dinner and rest there. So, you were just screaming there after being stabbed. Thatch said with a smile to Teach, who was sitting opposite him. Ah! But I still worked, Thatch. Teach drank the wine in his hand and laughed loudly. Besides, I was the one who took the head of that animal captain. You just gave him the final blow after Ace knocked him down, Thatch pointed out speechlessly. Teach smiled and avoided the question, then looked at Ace and Lucci, who were sitting on the side, pointed at Ace and said, "Oh, by the way, you are the flame rookie, right? I have heard your story. You want to take your father's head, and if you fail after 100 challenges, you will join the Whitebeard Pirates." Hey? I didn't say the number of times. Ace shouted in shock. It will never end. Thatch smiled and took a sip of the wine in the glass. By the way, this is the 88th defeat. Lucci looked at Thatch with amusement. Thatch, you are the one who said this number, right? Hey! I was the one who spread the words. How did you know that, Lucci? Sachi looked at Lucci curiously with his eyes wide open. Hey! Teach looked at Thatch in surprise. Of course I saw it. Lucci said mysteriously. Come to think of it, it seems that many crew members of the Whitebeard Pirates are people with special abilities. Said Lucci, the pirate sitting on the railing and looking at the deck. Yeah. I think so too. Ace, who was sitting next to Lucci, nodded in agreement. Dad's is the tremor fruit, Captain Marco's is the bird fruit, and Captain Jaw's is the shining fruit. Teach, who was sitting on the deck, responded while drinking the wine in his hand. You have the flame fruit. As a cook, I really envy your ability. Thatch excitedly raised the wooden barrel cup in his hand and said enviously. If you want, you have to kill this guy. Lucci, who was about to drink juice, stopped what he was doing the moment he heard these words. He subconsciously looked at Teach, who was talking. The man was sitting cross-legged on the deck with his head slightly lowered. A shadow covered his face, making it impossible to see his expression. He seemed to be immersed in his own thoughts and was still talking in a low voice. I heard that if a person with special abilities dies, his fruit will reappear somewhere in the world. Hey, don't say such dangerous things. I don't want some kind of power so much that I would kill my friends. Thatch interrupted Teach and said with a smile. Who is your partner? Ace shouted angrily. Oh, sorry. Well, it's just a matter of time, right? Sachi said with a smile while pouring wine. Hey! Ace yelled angrily. Then the rule on this ship is that whoever finds the fruit can eat it, Teach added with a smile. Is there any fruit you want to eat? Ace asked subconsciously. Lucci looked at Teach, wondering what he would say. Yes, do you want to hear it? Tiki grinned. Not really. Ace said uninterested. Haha, Teach, is that it? Sachi looked at Teach with a mysterious smile on his face. Oh, of course. Tiki looked at Thatch with the same smile. I want to find it in my whole life. Lucci looked at Teach solemnly. Was he going to say it? He wanted to know what kind of devil fruit he wanted. He could feel the ambition hidden when he talked about the devil fruit he wanted. It was buried deep, and he felt a sense of uneasiness. Transparent fruit. A man's romance. Thatch and Teach clinked their glasses and shouted excitedly. Hey! Lucci was shocked by their conversation. He thought they were going to say something. Sure enough, he shouldn't have had hope for their conversation. We've finished the wine. Can this barrel be opened? Ace looked at the strange barrel of wine next to him. There seemed to be something written on it. He squinted his drunken eyes and tried to see clearly. Wait, that barrel won't do. That's Dad's wine. Thatch shouted hurriedly. Is this the cheapest bar? Ace asked with a raised eyebrow. It's Dad's preference. Tiki said with a smile. The four emperors' preferences. Lucci asked curiously. Because my father sent all the treasures he was supposed to take back to his hometown, he can only make do with the cheapest wine. Sachi explained with a smile. It seems to be a remote island that can't even afford the celestial gold that can be given to the celestial dragons, and the world government won't protect it, Teach added with a smile. The same thing happened to that island just now, so we lent them the flag. Thatch said proudly with a smile on his face, holding his drink, our father is such a pirate. Ace opened his eyes wide and couldn't help but think of the words he declared when he and his brothers spoke loudly about their dreams on the cliff. It doesn't matter if I use fear or anything else. I want my name to resound throughout the world. Ace lowered his head and pursed his lips in sadness and anger. He's a great pirate, right? You and him are like heaven and earth, the difference between a firefly and the sun. Teach laughed loudly. Stop making sarcastic remarks, Teach. Thatch frowned and stopped him. Chapter 74. Lucci looked at Ace's lowered head, feeling a little worried. He had realized what was happening. Every time Ace was like this, he ignored everyone, trapped himself, immersed in his own thoughts, and no one could pull him out. But he also knew that he probably wanted to be alone for a while, so he turned and walked to the deck on the other side, feeling the night sea breeze and looking at the starry sky. He couldn't help but relax and let his mind go. He didn't want to think about anything now. Ace lowered his head and thought back to when he and Luffy were kids, when they were 10 years old and dreamed of what they would become. He had always wanted to prove to the world, to himself, to a man who was long dead but still hung over him like a dark cloud, that he was strong, that he could surpass him, that he didn't need anything from him. He would defeat someone who once rivaled him to prove it, but he didn't believe that the gap between them could be that big, and he didn't understand why he was such a pirate. Ugh! Ace's right hand ignited with flames, and he attacked Whitebeard's abdomen with all his strength. Gulala, what happened today? Did you add a few more firewood? Whitebeard used his haki to ward off Ace's fire fist attack and said with a smile, there was no sneak attack either, it looks good. Ace stepped back, bent one knee, and watched Whitebeard take an attacking stance, gritting his teeth and yelling, that guy is just talking nonsense, it has nothing to do with me wanting to defeat you. In just one round, he was knocked to the ground. Ace lowered his eyes and said, it's out of reach. This gap. There is no way. Whitebeard walked to the barrel, picked it up with one hand and drank it while saying, thank you for this wine. Now you can at least fight with me for a few moves. Ace looked up at him in surprise. Whitebeard looked down at Ace and said seriously, I'm always here for you, you bastard. Ace sat silently in the smashed ruins, lowered his head and was silent for a moment before whispering, I'm so annoyed. Go get your revenge, newbie. We have to defeat him completely, daddy. Come on. Ace. Outside the battlefield where Ace and Whitebeard were fighting, the crew members of the Whitebeard pirates cheered loudly. These guys are such a headache, this is no joke. Whitebeard said helplessly as he listened to the voices from both sides outside the battlefield. Ace looked at Whitebeard with sharp eyes, stepped forward with his left foot, took the lead in attacking, and opened his right hand. Firefly fired Daruma and countless green small flames flew towards Whitebeard. Whitebeard looked at the countless small flames slowly floating towards him and said disdainfully, do you want to test my courage? He used his observation haki to dodge the flames floating towards him. Whitebeard looked at the small flame that just floated past and suddenly flew towards him and exploded continuously. There is a time difference in the fierce fire, and this move was specially used before using the observation haki. Whitebeard kept punching to block all the bombs approaching him. The rookie is always trying to be clever like this. Missed gun. Ace continuously shot out super high temperature flames from his fingertips towards Whitebeard, and quickly moved to his side in between Whitebeard's punches. Ace recalled what Lucci had told him about a kind of gas that could be produced by condensing flames together, and that he could try using the flame gas to accelerate. Ace used the momentum of the flames to accelerate his fire feet and rushed quickly to the position above and behind Whitebeard. At the same time, he used all his strength to quickly turn his hands into flames and condense a large amount of high-temperature flames to attack Whitebeard. Oh no, Dad's back has been grabbed. The crew members of the Whitebeard pirates shouted in shock. Whitebeard turned his head with a fierce look in his eyes. His left hand was wrapped with Conqueror's haki, and he clenched his fist and used the power of his devil fruit to throw the flames at Ace. Ace looked at Whitebeard's strength in shock. The moment his punch came over, there was a huge impact. He was hit by Whitebeard's attack and his body kept retreating backwards. He half knelt, supporting the ground with his left hand. He barely controlled his retreating body before falling into the sea. Blood continued to flow out of Ace's mouth, but a smug smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Look, my fire, finally, you can use it. Hot kid. Whitebeard said with a smile. Hee hee. Next time I will conquer you together with your abilities. Finally unable to hold on any longer, Ace fell backwards with this last thought. He let his eyes close completely, his vision kept getting darker, and the sea water slowly submerged his head. Hey! He fell into the sea, who can save him? The pirates on the ship shouted. The shadow controlled by Lucci jumped into the sea. Has it reached the 100th time already? Probably. What? Ace suddenly woke up from his dream. How do you feel? Lucci heard the noise and turned around, handing a glass of water to Ace. It's okay. Was it Whitebeard who saved me? Ace looked at the bandaged wounds on his body. Well, sort of. Lucci smiled. Hey! Ace looked at Lucci in confusion, then thought of something and screamed, ah! Doesn't this mean there's only one more battle left? Damn it! That was the best battle we've had so far, it successfully allowed him to use all his abilities. Lucci consoled with a smile. Yeah, you saw it, isn't it amazing? The strategy we thought of before was a perfect success. Ace shouted happily, and then exclaimed, and that ability. No matter how many times I fight him, I still feel that his strength is unfathomable. Ace looked at the smile on Lucci's face and asked in confusion, what are you doing? Nothing, you are happy, Ace. Lucci said with a smile. Ace looked at Lucci in confusion. When you challenge a man you approve of, you will still be very excited even if you fail. Lucci teased. What? That guy is an enemy. Don't talk nonsense. Ace retorted excitedly after hearing Lucci's words. Lucci couldn't help but laugh when he saw Ace's angry back. He still didn't admit it. Gilyalu. I'm so hungry. Lucci keeps saying things that have nothing to do with me. Who would agree with him? Ace walked in the corridor, rubbing his hungry stomach and muttering angrily. You've gone too far, Dad. Ace listened to the voice that suddenly came from the door, he knew whose voice it was, Captain Marco of Team 1. Ace stood at the door and listened quietly to the conversation coming from inside, he realized that their conversation would be related to him. Dad, your current physical condition is not suitable for continuous duels with Ace now. Marco said worriedly. So you want me to apply for a truce? Don't be silly, son. Whitebeard paused, then continued, there is no fight without injuries. Although the medicine can alleviate your physical condition is still getting worse. Marco looked at Whitebeard and said worriedly. Ace listened in shock, is Whitebeard's health not okay? Chapter 75. That's for sure. No one can stay in their prime forever. Whitebeard showed a domineering smile. But if I can't even be a match for a kid I like, can you call such a man a daddy? Marco smiled proudly, this is their father. Whether it's 100 times or 200 times, I will accept that guy's challenge. Whitebeard showed a trace of worry on his face, because that guy is so impatient that he will die if I don't take care of him, I can't pretend not to see it. Ace listened in silence, then turned and walked towards the deck. He didn't know how to face them. They were obviously enemies. Early morning. Marco stared at the freckled boy who had his hands on the railing. He walked over and put the bowl of food in his hand on the ground. Marco was about to get up and leave when a voice stopped him. Why do you all call him Daddy? He turned to look at the boy and smiled. Because he called us sons. We are all people rejected by the world. Even if it's just words, we still feel very happy. Marco approached. How long are you going to risk your life like this? Make a decision. You can't possibly take your father's head right now. Decide whether you want to leave this ship and start over, or stay here, and carry Whitebeard's flag. Ace sat there pondering what Marco had said, he looked up when he felt someone sitting next to him. Lucci glanced at Ace, he could already tell what he was thinking. So you plan on joining them? Ace nodded slightly. But I still don't trust them enough, so I won't tell them about my bloodline, but I like it here. Lucci remained silent. He sighed, smiled, turned around, leaned on the railing and looked out to sea. Ace looked at Lucci and frowned. Lucci, what about you? If you don't want to stay, we can leave together. No, you belong here, Ace, and I want you to stay. Lucci shook his head and smiled, then explained, I just don't know if I can trust them, and I have some unfinished business. Well, no matter what you choose, I will support you because we are partners. Ace said with a smile. So when do you plan to join them? Lucci asked Ace with a smile. We still have one last battle between us. This is the last time, and I will definitely defeat him. Ace looked at the sea and said firmly. Of course. Lucci stood beside Ace and stared at the rough sea with him. Marco was lying on the deck railing, his favorite place to rest, doing nothing but gazing at the sky and enjoying the perfect day. The sky was clear, the waves were calm but enough to make the boat rock slightly, and the breeze was perfect, with the smell of the sea. He couldn't help but close his eyes, stretching his arms slightly, putting his hands under his head to make a small pillow, crossing his ankles loosely, listening to the sound of the breeze and the sound of the waves hitting the side of the boat, with a relaxed smile on his lips, hoping that no one would disturb him. "Hey, Marco!" A voice came from the deck of the ship. He knew who it was and what he wanted to do, but he might not be able to help his brother this time. "Go and persuade him," Sachi said worriedly as he looked at Marco lying leisurely on the railing. "Sorry, I can't do that, Yoi," Marco replied with a smile. "The location and date for the 100th duel between Ace and Daddy has been set, Yoi. Piccolo Island, Whitebeard's territory in the New World." Lucci stood on the Mobi, quietly looking at the uninhabited island in front of him. In an open space surrounded by mountains on all sides, Ace and Whitebeard were confronting each other. The duel that lasted for more than 3 months will come to an end today. Uh-oh. Here we go. Can this island hold up? Lucci watched nervously as a fierce domineering aura swept across the entire place amidst the violent storm, lightning, and thunder. "What do you think?" "The results of his training." Thatch looked at Jinbei next to him. "Honestly, I really admire him. He was simply not the same person when we fought each other." Jinbei watched the battle between Ace and Whitebeard with a serious expression. Ace used the flames under his feet to propel himself backwards, quickly dodging Whitebeard's Kusukami's attack, while his fingers continuously shot out powerful flaming bullets. He saw Whitebeard turning the knife in his hand to block all the bullets he shot. Suddenly his expression became fierce. His observation haki allowed him to see Whitebeard's next attack. If he didn't dodge it, he would be hit and lose his ability to move. Ace turned his entire lower body into flames, and used the momentum of the flames to propel his body into the air. Whitebeard's fist missed Ace and landed on the mountain behind Ace. A large number of rocks continued to fall. Ace used the falling rocks to twist his body in the air and blocked Whitebeard's knife attack the moment he landed. Damn it! Ace gritted his teeth and used all his strength to resist Whitebeard's knife that was constantly pressing down. His expression condensed, and he concentrated all his strength on his arms, using fire to knock Whitebeard's weapon away. Ace stared at Whitebeard. This was his last trick. Ace used his last bit of strength to create several circles of huge spiral flames. The spiral flames continued to condense into a huge fireball wisp big flame ring. Oh! Whitebeard looked at the fireball that was about to attack him and smiled in surprise. Then his expression serious, he clenched his fist, concentrated all his strength in his hand, and swung his fist in the direction of the fireball. The Whitebeard pirates outside the island watched in shock. The ground collapsed, the mountains shook, dust flew, and a huge explosion occurred on the island. The powerful momentum hit the waves and continuously washed the Mobi. Lucci steadied himself and stared at the island not far away. When everything calmed down, they could clearly see Whitebeard's fist resting on Ace's chest. Whitebeard stretched out his left hand to stop Ace, who was about to fall to the ground, pulled him into his arms, hugged him and said with a smile, "Are you satisfied, my son?" "Ah, I lost." Lucci looked at Ace and the Spade Pirates who were standing on the rocks not far away. They were performing the disbanding ceremony of the Spade Pirates. "I'm sorry for acting on my own initiative. I could have continued under him, but I want to end it my way." Ace looked at the crew members he had fought with and said seriously, "If you don't want to board Whitebeard's ship, just tell me. I'll do my best to help. Because I'm no longer the me you decided to follow, so I think it's natural that you don't want to board his ship with me." Bree sighed dramatically. Deuce laughed and said, "He's talking about that again, Richie." Richie joked, "The captain does have this side of him." Then the Spades members burst into laughter. Ace looked at them in surprise. Deuce held out a black banner and handed it to Ace, "We will all follow you. Diaz had already guessed it before you made your decision. In fact, there was no need to confirm it with us." Richie said with a smile. "You haven't just started acting on your own today." Diaz said with a smile. "What is this?" Ace took the flag from Deuce's hand in confusion. "This is our pirate flag. It seems that Captain Thatch helped us retrieve it." Deuce looked at Ace and said seriously, "Ace, you are a pirate. We were attracted by the flame in your hand, so please hold the flag in your hand and let us move forward with you." Ace raised the flag in his hand and released the flame to make it exist forever in his hand. The scene of them designing this flag together was still vivid in his mind. Since then, the Spade Pirates have disbanded. Chapter 76. It was a sunny day, and a ceremony was being held on the deck of the Moby Dick. Ace and Whitebeard sat face to face and drank the wine they raised. Ace put down his wine glass, put his hands on his kneeling thighs, looked at the Whitebeard sitting on the chair and said seriously, "My name is Porgas D. Ace. I also carried great ambitions when I went to sea, but there was actually nothing on my back. Now I finally realized this. After I entered this ship, I felt that I could find what I have been looking for on this ship, so I want to bear your mark on my empty back." Ace lowered his head slightly, revealing his straight back, and said solemnly, "Please give me my father's skull. The expression is good, and the skeleton will be very happy too." Gulala. Whitebeard smiled happily. Izzo raised his right hand and said loudly, "From now on, the two of you present have successfully become father and son." Lucci couldn't help but smile when he saw the identical Whitebeard pirate logo on the backs of Ace and Whitebeard. He raised his glass in the direction of Ace. He was very happy that Ace had found his home. "Let's celebrate Ace's joining us," Whitebeard said with a smile. "Let's have a party." "Oh." Lucci stood at the corner, his arms crossed and a relaxed smile on his face, watching with amusement Ace being surrounded by pirates. The Whitebeard pirates were all very excited, and Ace was pulled by them to sit in the middle of the crowd. They kept bringing plates of food to the freckled boy, and Ace buried his face in the mountain of food and kept eating. Suddenly a hand fell on Lucci's shoulder. He was startled and turned around subconsciously. When he saw Marco standing behind him, he calmed down, a faint smile appeared on his face and asked, "What's wrong, Marco?" Marco crossed his arms and looked the boy over. "You don't fully trust us yet, do you?" Lucci was shocked by his direct question, but he quickly calmed down and said calmly, "I usually trust Ace more, but you're right, I can't fully trust all of you yet." Marco was silent for a moment, then grabbed Lucci's arm and pulled him out of the party. Lucci was shocked by Marco's behavior, he didn't know what he wanted to do. "Where are we going?" Marco dragged Lucci to his room, and after entering, Marco turned around and locked the door behind him. Lucci looked at him in surprise and asked in confusion, "Marco, what are you doing?" Marco walked to the desk, sat on the chair, looked at Lucci standing in front of him and said seriously, "I want you to tell me what is bothering you so much and why you refuse to believe any of us, Yoi." Lucci was silent for a few minutes, then lowered his head, his hood covering his eyes. "I don't have anything to say, that's all I have to say." Lucci turned to leave, but was stopped by Phoenix's next words. "If you don't believe me, I can tell you something about myself that no one else knows, only Dad knows." Lucci paused, turned around and looked at Marco, and asked in confusion, "Why are you doing this?" Marco sighed and shook his head helplessly, "Because you are my brother, whether you like it or not, I don't like to see you so close to yourself, so I want to help you, no matter what I can do." Lucci was silent. He paused and said softly, "Sorry, I just need to confirm something. No matter what, we will always be behind you. If you need us for anything, we will find a way to help you, so don't refuse our help." Marco looked at Lucci and said seriously. When Lucci heard Marco's firm words, his eyes turned red and a warm feeling surged in his heart. Maybe he could trust them. Although he trusted Ace more, he wanted to give it a try. Chapter 77. Do you know about dragons? Dragon. Marco repeated, surprised for a moment, but he didn't show it, he knew who it was. Is he the leader of the Revolutionary Army? Lucci nodded and said, I have something I want to ask him. This is why I went out to sea. Marco smiled and said, we can help you inquire Yoi in our territory. Our intelligence network will be easier to implement than investigating on your own, so don't worry. I will inform you as soon as there is news, Yoi. Then he was silent for a while and said calmly, but this is not a reason for you not to join us. Lucci was shocked by Marco's sharpness. He was silent for a while and said, I lost some of my memory when I was a child. I can feel that memory is very important to me. Lucci paused, then added, you know, I didn't join Ace's ship. He invited me, but I refused. Marco looked at Lucci in confusion. Ace seemed to have said that Lucci was not one of his crew members, but he didn't know why. They could see that they got along just like partners or family. I can feel that in the memory I lost, I seem to have promised a very important person that I would join him when I grow up. Lucci said with a smile, if I join you, I'm not sure if I will feel regretful after I recover my memory, or break my oath to someone. Marco was silent, he didn't know Lucci had such an experience, he needed to talk to his father about Lucci. It seems that this kid also wants to stay. Whitebeard grinned. Marco nodded. He had already told his father about Lucci's situation. How did Dad know? Sachi asked puzzledly. He is struggling. He likes it here, but he thinks too much about his blank memories. Whitebeard replied. Dad, is there anything we can do to make Lucci want to stay without breaking his oath? Asked Thatch. Whitebeard smiled and said, don't worry, my son, I have already figured out how to deal with this problem. If all goes according to plan, Lucci won't be leaving anytime soon. Hey, Lucky! Lucci turned to the direction of the voice and saw Ace walking towards him. What's wrong, Ace? How do you feel? Ace asked worriedly, you seem to be in a bad mood these days. Ah, it's okay, don't worry Ace. Lucci smiled, and then said, I'm just thinking about the next plan. Have you decided? Ace looked at Lucci anxiously and expectantly and asked. Lucci looked at Ace's expectant expression and looked away. Well, I won't leave for now. Ace looked at Lucci. He already knew what he meant, but he still didn't quite understand. But I can sense that you like it here, so why don't you consider staying? Well, I really like it here, but... Lucci was about to explain to Ace, but Thatch's shout interrupted him. Hey, Lucci, Ace, Dad is looking for you. Thatch said with his arm around Ace's shoulders and a broad smile. Ace was interrupted by Thatch's voice before he could hear what Lucci said. He looked at Thatch and asked subconsciously, Dad, what do you want to talk to us about? Lucci was also very curious and didn't know what Whitebeard wanted them to do. It's about Lucci. Sachi smiled mysteriously. Lucci and Ace looked at each other in confusion, then followed Thatch into Whitebeard's conference room. The conference room was very large with a large table. No one knew what had happened, but all the commanders were sitting around the table with Whitebeard sitting at the front. Lucci, do you want to join us? When Whitebeard saw Lucci coming in, he said straight to the point, no matter what, I want you to be my son. Lucci looked at Whitebeard in shock. He didn't expect him to ask so bluntly. He was a little overwhelmed, then calmed down and responded, although I like it here, I went out to sea to find my memories. In the memories I lost, I seem to have promised a very important person that I would join him later. I don't want to break my oath to him, so I hope I won't regret it after I find my memories. Whitebeard saw this as an opportunity for him to join. You don't have to break your promise, kid. Whitebeard smiled and said, I have a suggestion. Lucci looked at him curiously. What? Whitebeard smiled happily, the boy was determined to do anything to keep his promise, he liked it. I know you think your memory is incomplete now, and you are not sure if you can join us forever. Whitebeard paused, then took the initiative. So I know that maybe you won't be a part of our crew forever, but I still want you to be my son, so I want you to join me and become my son before you regain your memory, even if it's only for a few years. After you regain your memory, you can join other pirate groups if you want. This way, it won't be considered a break of promise after you regain your memory. After all, you are just staying with your family. Lucci was a little surprised, he didn't expect Whitebeard would consider so much just to make him his son. Whitebeard looked at Lucci, who was thinking with his head down. He smiled and added, after you join, you can accept my symbol or not. No matter what, you will always be my son. Marco and Thatch looked at each other, then smiled at Lucci, and Ace looked at Lucci expectantly, so that they would be a real family. Lucci was silent for a while, a warm feeling surged in his heart, and then he smiled brightly and nodded, okay, I do. Lucci looked at Izzo and grinned, thank you for your help, Izzo. Oh. That's great, we have a new brother. The pirates shouted happily. The man trembled, swallowed, and slowly approached the man, knowing that his life could be measured in hours at this moment. Looking at the tall figure, he stammered, Lieutenant General. The heavy figure turned toward him. Ah, you're here, so how far do we have to go? About a day and a half, Lieutenant General. He held his breath nervously. Why did he feel his legs were so weak? Okay. The man seemed to smile. Although the mask hid the man's face, he could feel his eyes on him. You seem to be a little unwell. You can report to your superiors and tell them that I asked you to rest tonight. I need you to have enough energy tomorrow to prepare for what is coming. Okay, thank you, Lieutenant General. He ended the conversation almost eagerly. He closed the door carefully, and after closing the door he almost ran away along the corridor. Why was he assigned to such a crazy person? He screamed in fear inwardly. A tall man sat on the deck of the ship, calmly chewing the senbei he had placed on his lap, while everyone around him was running around, preparing for what was to come. The young men on the boat moved restlessly, alarmed by the occasional behavior of the man on deck, while the older men on the boat were unfazed, moving quickly and not bothered by the man on deck because they had known him for a long time and were well aware of his occasional eccentricities. The man paid no attention to the commotion around him. He looked down at the newspaper in his hand and couldn't help feeling a little worried, but not particularly uneasy. He knew that the old bastard might be a pirate, but he knew he wasn't a bad guy. He looked at the newspaper in his hand and grinned. This kid better explain himself. Chapter 78. Hey, Harta. Ace watched Harta take out a notebook and mark something on the date. Ace couldn't help but ask curiously, "What are you doing?" When Lucci heard Ace's question, he looked at Harta curiously. Harta grinned and showed Ace and Lucci the notebook. The prank master, write down every time I do a great prank that has an amazing effect. Also, if something amazing happens, I write it down here so that I won't forget it and I can use it to tease my brothers one day. Ace and Lucci stared at their notebooks and read their notes. When they saw the amazing pranks that Harta had played on his brothers, they burst into uncontrollable laughter and even felt sympathy for some of the people who had been pranked. This is awesome! Ace said with a loud laugh. Harta was surprised for a moment, then he laughed out loud, "Right. Then I seem to see you circled today's date just now. Why is that?" Lucci asked confusedly. Harta's smile became even brighter, and he replied with a smile, "Because today is the first day that you and Ace become our brothers, and you have completely begun to open your hearts to us." Lucci's throat felt a little dry, and he was speechless for a moment. He seemed to be avoiding the topic and continued to look at the notebook in his hand with Ace. Ace noticed something was wrong. He frowned and turned to look at Harta in confusion. Why doesn't Marco have any pranks on his name? Harta opened his eyes wide, mouth open, looked at Ace in confusion, and whispered, "Are you crazy?" He swallowed and looked around nervously, hoping that Marco was not nearby. After making sure that Marco was not around, he turned to look at Ace. Who in their right mind would want to tease Marco? "We tried to tease his department before, but..." Harta said in horror. Ace heard what Harta said, closed his notebook, turned to look at Lucci. They looked at each other, and then they showed an evil smile on their faces. "Is that so?" Harta's face turned pale instantly when he heard Ace's words. When he saw the dangerous and naughty smiles on Lucci and Ace's faces, he subconsciously took a few steps back, swallowed, and looked at Ace and Lucci with a pale face. "Really? Marco is going to kill us?" Harta muttered in shock before an excited smile appeared on his face as he saw the prank that Lucci and Ace were planning on Marco. "Hey, Harta, who else is the master of pranks besides you?" Ace asked Harta. "Well, that's Thatch." Harta blinked and answered in confusion, then reacted and tried to stop him. If Thatch gets involved, Marco will really kill us." "Really? Interesting." Lucci's mouth curled up a mischievous smile, and then said to Ace, "Let's go, Ace." Harta couldn't help laughing as he watched them leave. He then chased after them and said, "Of course I want to participate in such an interesting event." "What?" Thatch's horrified and shocked screams could be heard throughout the ship as Ace and Harta explained their prank to him. Lucci, Ace, and Harta all looked at Thatch with mockery. Thatch stared at the three of them with a horrified expression. "Are you suicidal?" "Probably." Ace shrugged nonchalantly. "And regardless of the consequences," Harta added with a smile. "It's true," Lucci said with a smile. Thatch looked at the three of them in silence for a short while, then he grabbed Ace and Lucci's shoulders and said excitedly, "This is awesome. You guys are geniuses, and natural pranksters." Ace put on a fake smile and bowed pretentiously, then raised his head and said teasingly, Okay, thank you. So are you up to the task?" Thatch nodded, smiling excitedly. "So what are your plans?" Lucci and Ace looked at each other with evil smiles on their faces. Lucci motioned for Harta and Thatch to come closer. "Come here." Then he told Thatch about Ace and his plan. The next morning, something incredible happened. Marco overslept. Yes, it was Marco who possessed the phoenix fruit and usually did not sleep at night. What they didn't know was that during the party last night, Thatch put sleeping pills in Marco's drink, which was apparently the reason why Marco woke up late. When Marco got up because of the noise, he turned around and saw his room filled with pineapples, each wearing a formal dress. He found a note on the door that said, "You look lonely, so we brought your mom, dad, and the rest of your family to stay with you overnight." Under the words mom and dad, there is a pineapple in a black suit and a pineapple in a purple dress. Marco's face showed an angry look. He swore that he would punish the person who organized this prank, then he quickly got out of bed and walked towards the door. He could hardly control his anger. He opened the door with force. The next moment, 3 click sounds rang out at the same time. Within a few seconds, Marco found that his body was all glue, and then covered with blue feathers. He turned around and saw a human-sized pink peacock standing next to him, its mouth facing Marco. It looked like it was going to kiss him. Marco's pupils shrank suddenly, and a huge anger was released from his body. Everyone on the ship felt this anger. His eyes were covered by his golden bangs, his eyes were hidden in the shadows, and he exuded a thick black aura. Someone was going to die. Marco was going to kill someone in charge. Ever since Thatch and Harta tried to play a prank on his department, they never dared to play any pranks on him again. Now this situation has caused someone new to join them. He was sure that at least one of them had joined this disgusting game, but it would be stupid for Lucci to participate in this game, so only one person was left. Poor gas. When I catch you, you're fucking dead. Marco roared loudly. Despite the danger to their lives, Ace and his accomplices still held binoculars in their hands, hiding in the lookout and laughing loudly. Even when they saw the phoenix coming towards them, Marco's image was too funny. They laughed so hard that they could not take his anger seriously. Ow! Damn it, did he have to hit me so hard? The first thing Ace felt after waking up was pain all over his body. I'm sure he used Haki. Ace said with a grin, then he turned to look at Lucci who was watching the show and said angrily, "Where did you hide? Why didn't you get beaten? We obviously did it together." Lucci was holding a book in his hand. He blinked and looked at Ace innocently when he heard what Ace said, "Who told you not to run away? You kept laughing in front of the victim. Damn it." Ace sighed, quickly put on his clothes and left the cabin. He walked to the railing, breathing the fresh air mixed with the saltiness of the sea, quietly listening to the sound of the waves, and gradually relaxing his body. "Hey, Ace." Ace turned around and saw Thatch and Harta standing behind him. They seemed to be in much worse shape than him. "Good morning." Ace waved to them. "Man, this prank is well worth all the pain we've suffered. I don't think anyone will ever forget it." Harta smiled widely, very satisfied with what happened today. Chapter 79. Even Dad was looking at us with a look of shock and awe. Even Dad found it funny. Thatch laughed excitedly. When Ace heard this, he couldn't help but think of the expression on his father's face and couldn't help but laugh. He really wished he had a camera at that time so that he could capture Marco's angry expression. "Why do you still want to play a prank?" The moment Ace, Thatch, and Harta heard the voice, they immediately trembled all over. Ace turned his head stiffly to look in the direction of the voice, and sure enough, Marco was standing behind them, looking at them quietly. Ha, ha, how could that be?" Sachi laughed awkwardly. Yes, yes." Ace and Harta shrank their heads and responded. "Excuse me, commanders, but Dad needs you to come up on deck. We have visitors coming," a member of the 7th Division interrupted anxiously. "Who is it?" Marco and Thatch stared in surprise, then suddenly they realized who it was. "I think I feel his presence, is that true?" Marco said nervously. Thatch wanted to deny it, but he felt it too, but it had only been so long, why would he come? It had only been a year since they last met. "Who are you talking about?" Ace finally found a chance to ask. Thatch looked at Ace and explained it's a vice admiral coming to visit Dad. "His name is Iron Fist Garp. Have you heard of him?" "What?" Ace's terrified cry spread across the entire deck. "When will he arrive?" "I'll be at the shore soon." Thatch was frightened by Ace's performance and responded subconsciously. Ace stared at Thatch in amazement, as if he had been sentenced to death, and then he ran around the deck, looking for a place to block him. Lucci was startled by Ace's shout and quickly rushed out of the cabin. He looked at the people gathered on the deck and was a little confused. "What happened?" "Iron Fist Garp is coming over." Harta was the first to come to his senses and explained to Lucci. Iron Fist, Garp. Lucci didn't know why, but from the moment he heard this name, he felt an inexplicable panic in his heart, sweat kept pouring down his forehead, and his intuition told him that he needed to hide as soon as possible. Hey! Lucci, what's wrong with you? Harta looked at Lucci's face, which suddenly turned extremely pale, in shock. Ah, I'm fine. Lucci responded absent-mindedly, muttering, is there any place I can hide? Lucci looked down at the shadow behind Thatch and quickly activated his ability. Hey! Harta stared in amazement at the place where Lucci disappeared. As soon as Ace heard the footsteps, he quickened his pace and ran quickly behind Whitebeard's chair. He quickly hid in the cloak hanging on Whitebeard's chair, letting the white cloak completely cover his figure. Dad, help me hide. Ace looked up at Whitebeard and whispered. Ace, why do you look so scared? Thatch asked loudly. Marco and the others turned to look at Ace. Thatch had almost expressed all their thoughts. They also wanted to know why. Why was Ace so scared and nervous about a navy? He even took the initiative to ask his father for help. This made them feel strange. Before Ace could answer, a figure appeared on the ship, a very familiar figure, with grey hair, black eyes and a crazy smile on his face. He didn't expect that his stupid grandfather would come to Whitebeard's ship in public. This was almost impossible. Garb. Whitebeard greeted the old man who jumped onto the deck. What brings you here? Ace looked at the smile on Garp's face that never fell. The shadow dominated by the Iron Fist made him feel his body trembling. He silently encouraged himself in his heart, there is nothing to be afraid of, I am very strong now, the old man can't hit me now. Give the kid who's been hiding behind you a warning. Garp replied with a crazy smile on his face. If he doesn't come out in 3 seconds, I will make him regret leaving Dawn Island. Hey! Ace looked at Marco and the others and shouted, why don't you attack him? He is a marine, isn't he our enemy? Izzo looked at Ace in confusion. Although Dad and Garp are longtime rivals, they occasionally drink together. What? Ace couldn't believe what he heard. Pirates and Marines were drinking together. Now that you're out, Ace, I'm going to take you away so that you can become a powerful navy. Garp looked at Ace and smiled with satisfaction as if he saw his future navy grandson. The Whitebeard pirates stared at Garp in surprise, as if they had heard the most ridiculous remarks. Was the navy hero finally crazy? Why would he want a notorious pirate to become a navy member? And he also wanted to take his son away from Whitebeard. This was impossible. Don't even think about taking Ace away, you damn old man. Someone in the crowd shouted. He is one of us now, Yoa Marco said seriously looking at Garp. I don't see any tattoos, Cap said calmly, inserting his little finger into his nostril. Nonsense, old man. Ace looked at his grandfather angrily, then tore off his shirt and proudly showed him the logo belonging to his father. Brat! You would rather be with that old bastard with a white beard than with your dear grandpa. Cap roared angrily. Yes. Ace said without hesitation, he's the best dad. Whitebeard took in the firm tone in Ace's voice and he had to admit that the words made him feel warm inside. Garp looked at Ace in silence, then smiled. In that case. He looked up at Whitebeard with a serious expression. You'd better make sure he's safe, Newgate. Of course. Whitebeard replied, he is my son. No one can hurt my son. You're the best. After saying that, Garp prepared to return to the ship. His purpose of coming here had been achieved. However, the moment he turned around, he suddenly felt a familiar breath, as if he had seen it somewhere. He looked dazed for a moment, but he still couldn't remember it. However, it seems that there is another kid hiding. That's interesting. He's a good material for joining the Navy. Cap showed a huge smile on his face, and turned to look at Thatch with interest. Newgate, why is there a kid hiding on your ship? Don't you want to come out and meet him? Hey! Thatch looked at Garp's excited eyes and looked around in horror, but didn't see anyone else. He turned to look at Garp and swallowed. Why is this crazy Navy staring at me? Thatch screamed in his heart. Izzo and Harta put their hands on their weapons, trying to prevent the Navy from attacking them suddenly, but it was obvious that the Navy was much faster than them. In a flash, the Navy rushed behind Thatch. Behind him? Izzo and Harta watched in surprise as Garp stretched out his hand and grabbed something from Thatch's shadow. Hey! Let me go! Lucci shouted loudly, struggling to escape from the Navy's hands. Hey! The white-beard pirate looked at him in shock and didn't react for a moment. Ace was the first to come to his senses, and he yelled at Garp, "You old bastard, let Lucci go." Hey? Lucci! Garp let go of his hand in shock. Ace, what did you call him? Garp asked in shock but with a hint of expectation. No. Ace shook his head. He understood what the old man meant. Really? Garp said in a disappointed tone, then looked at Lucci and said with a smile, "Boy, come with me to join the Navy." Chapter 80. You old bastard, you can't take Lucci away. Ace stood in front of Lucci and yelled at Garp, "He won't become a Marine." What? Garp showed an angry look on his face, and then rushed up and punched Ace on the head. You won't call me Grandpa now, Ace. Grandpa? The Whitebeard pirate stared in amazement, and Whitebeard opened his eyes wide in shock. Lucci looked at the huge bump on Ace's head in horror. This was definitely due to the use of armament haki. He looked at the anger on Garp's face and swallowed nervously. Why did he feel a dull pain in his head, as if he had felt his fist before? I'm my father's son. There's no way I can be a Navy man. Lucci said quickly, pulling open his clothes to reveal the tattoo on his chest. What? Garp said with a distorted face, Newgate, where did you pick it up from? Why didn't I pick up this kid who is so suitable to be a Navy first? Garp said angrily in his heart. Whitebeard looked at Garp in confusion, not understanding why he was looking at him like that. I'm leaving. Cap said angrily, then he turned and left, then jumped off the boat and returned to the warship. Ace felt relieved as he watched the old man leave. He couldn't believe that he had escaped punishment. This visit was different from any of his previous visits. Ace turned around to see Marco walking towards him with the same bored expression on his face as usual. Indeed, son. Whitebeard nodded, then looked at Ace. Why does Garp want you to become a Marine so much? Marco noticed that there seemed to be a strange light in Dad's eyes, as if he was worried or confused about something. The old man made it his mission to make us into the Navy. Ace complained, I will never become a Navy. We won't let him take you away. Thatch said with a smile, then patted his pompadour hair exaggeratedly, and said with lingering fear, but Garp is really scary. It hurts when that old guy hits me with his iron fist. Ace subconsciously touched his head and seemed to still be able to feel the pain. Lucci, why are you hiding too? Harta looked at Lucci and asked puzzledly. Hey! Lucci turned to look at Harta, scratched his head, and recalled his performance just now. When he heard Garp's name, his danger alarm suddenly sounded, and his intuition told him that he had to hide immediately. Why did he think so? Maybe I was chased by Garp before. Lucci touched his head and said hesitantly, after all, he is a Navy. What's wrong? Ace asked curiously, have you ever been chased by the Navy before? We are pirates. It would be strange if we were not chased by the Navy. Thatch put his arm around Ace's shoulders and said with a carefree smile. Hartha nodded in approval. Ace nodded, indicating his approval. Lucci looked at them and shook his head helplessly, but what they said was indeed correct. He recalled what happened just now. He did overreact to Garp's appearance. He seemed to be subconsciously afraid of him. Lucci pinched his temples and thought with a headache, could it be that he really had seen him before he lost his memory? Dawn Island. Luffy aimed at the free-falling rock in the distance and smashed it with force, grabbing the punching shoulder with his left hand to stabilize the impact of the retracting arm. Luffy! Dogura shouted to Luffy who was training, there's information about Ace. Really? Luffy said excitedly, then grabbed the branch in front of Dogula, bounced over, took the newspaper in his hand, and read it carefully. He. I knew Ace was fine. Luffy said happily while looking at Ace in the newspaper, and then a bright smile appeared on his face. I knew Ace was the best. I don't need to worry at all. If Ace knew that I was worried, he would be angry again. This old man named Whitebeard must be very powerful. He even beat Ace for such a long time. Luffy said puzzledly while looking at the report in the newspaper. Luffy put the newspaper down with a big smile on his face and decided, when I go out to sea, I will definitely defeat him faster than Ace. But why is Chi missing again? Luffy tilted his head and asked in confusion, is he lost again? Ah! Got it. Luffy tapped the palm of his left hand with his right hand, a look of sudden realization appeared on his face, and then he closed his eyes. Luffy followed his strange feeling and walked towards where Chi was. This was Chi teaching him the basics of what he called haki. It took some explanations and a final demonstration before he could even begin to understand what he was talking about, but once he had a firm grasp on how it worked, he learned quickly. But he didn't really get anything surprising from this, and the situation was much like his conversations with his friends in the forest and the ocean, so it was really easy to do. Hey! Chi! Luffy looked at Key back and rushed over quickly. He bumped into Key back, looked down at the book in his hand, and asked curiously, "What are you doing?" Chi caught Luffy's body and steadied himself. He glanced at Luffy, looked at the bright smile on his face, and sighed helplessly, "Luffy, don't hit me like this, it's dangerous." "Why?" Luffy asked in confusion, "This is faster." Chi smiled helplessly, "Your future crew members will have a hard time." Luffy looked at him in confusion, not understanding what he meant, and looked at the book in his hand and decided to continue with the previous question, "What are you reading?" Chi followed Luffy's gaze to the book in his hand and said with a smile, "I'm learning shipbuilding." "Hey!" Luffy hissed in question. "We still have a year before we go to sea." Chi looked at Luffy's puzzled expression and couldn't help but feel amused. He subconsciously ruffled his hair and said, "We don't have a boat. We need to build a small boat." Swoosh! Luffy's face showed an expression of sudden enlightenment, and then he shouted excitedly, "Then I want to help too, I want a super big ship. Then the materials will be left to you, Luffy." Chi looked at the excited Luffy and said with a smile. "Yet." Luffy nodded, ran quickly towards the forest, and shouted excitedly, "I want to find the biggest tree." Chapter 81. Ace and Lucci stood in front of Whitebeard's chair, with Thatch and Marco standing on either side, their expressions extremely serious. Whitebeard looked down at his sons. "My sons, I am sending you along to deal with some pirates on an island that we protect. They have been causing chaos on that island and they need to be dealt with accordingly." Ace and Lucci both nodded in agreement. Lucci stepped forward and asked, "When do we leave?" "Go pack your things first, you will need to leave in a few hours," Sachi said with a smile. Ace and Lucci nodded and left. Thatch looked at their backs as they left and couldn't help laughing. He quickly caught up with them, put his arms around their shoulders, smiled and said, "This is the first time you've gone out on a mission alone. If you need anything, feel free to contact me." "Really?" Lucci and Ace looked at each other with a smirk on their faces. "We need your food, lots of meat." "Hey!" Thatch pretended to be shocked, then acted sad and exaggeratedly shouted, "My storage room. I thought I could keep it full for a while." "Ha ha ha ha." Ace and Lucci couldn't help but laugh when they saw Thatch's funny expression. Marco looked at the backs of Thatch and Ace as they left, and a gentle smile appeared on his face. Then he thought of something and turned to look at his father, smiling and asking, "Dad, have you decided?" "Gulala, captain of Team 2, Ace will do a great job." Whitebeard laughed. A day later, Ace and Lucci finally landed on the target island. To their shock, the island was in chaos. Everyone was screaming and crying loudly, running in panic. The shouts of fear spread throughout the island, and gunshots could be heard everywhere. The village chief saw the Whitebeard logo on their bodies and ran towards them desperately, "Please help our village. The pirates are preparing to destroy our village, and they have already started to act." Lucci nodded, comforted him and reassured him, "Don't worry, village chief, my brothers and I will take care of it." The pirates spotted them and gradually surrounded them. One of the pirates walked up to them, stared at them, and sneered, "Who the hell are you two? I advise you not to mind your own business." Ace's hands were ablaze with flames and a smirk on his face. "We are the Whitebeard pirates, Ace and Lucci. We are here to destroy you so that you can never do any more damage to Daddy's territory again." Lucci drew out his sword and looked at the attacking pirates from the opposite side, an excited smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Soon Ace and Lucci defeated the weaker pirates. Lucci killed the last pirate on the island and couldn't help but sigh. It took the two of them almost a whole day to completely eliminate the cholera-infected pirates on the island. He relaxed his tense mind during the battle, looked at Ace not far away, and said jokingly with a relaxed smile on his face, "Ace, I think we should hurry up and report to Marco before his hair turns white. Yet, we've wasted too much time fighting these damn pirates. There are far more of them than I thought." Ace twisted his knuckles and said angrily, "They are just a bunch of rookies. How dare they attack Dad's territory?" Lucci nodded and agreed with Ace. There was basically no one in this group of pirates who could really fight against them. They just had the advantage of numbers. Lucci looked towards the pier, where he could just see the pirate's ship. He turned to Ace and said, "Ace, that should be the pirate's ship. Let's go take a look and see if there is any treasure." "Okay. I wonder if there will be anything interesting." Ace nodded in response. The two began to walk towards the pirate ship. Lucci and Ace entered from both sides respectively. Lucci curiously checked the things in the pirate ship. After searching for a while, he did not find what he wanted. When he heard Ace calling him, he directly left the place he was looking for and walked in the direction of Ace. "What's wrong?" Lucci asked curiously, looking at Ace's back. "Hey, look, what I found." Ace had a happy smile on his face and turned to show Lucci the room behind him. Lucci looked at the pile of treasures behind Ace and couldn't help but feel excited. The treasures almost filled the entire room. How did these pirates find so much treasure? Hee hee. These are all ours now. Ace said proudly with his hands on his hips. But the two of us can't take so much. Lucci looked at the warehouse full of treasures helplessly. They came out in Ace's rocket, which really couldn't hold a lot of treasures. Lucci touched his chin and thought, "Ace, let's rest here for a night and let Dad and the others pick us up tomorrow, so we don't have to carry these treasures." "Yeah." Ace picked up the treasure on the ground and put it in the pocket next to him, then picked it up and walked towards Lucci. Let's go to the village first." Lucci looked at the bag on Ace's shoulder and instantly understood what Ace meant. He smiled and said, "Let's go." Marco paced back and forth in front of Whitebeard's chair, looking at the sea from time to time. "Son, don't worry. Sooner or later, your hair will turn white because of worry," Whitebeard said with a smile as he looked at Marco walking around on the deck. "Dad, they should be back now, but we haven't heard from them yet." Marco showed a worried look on his face. "Brew, brew." Marco picked up the ringing den mushi. "Is this a call from Ace and the others?" Crack. "Moshi moshi." "Marco, I'm Ace." Ace's voice came out from the den mushi. Whitebeard looked down at the den mushi in Marco's hand. "Did something unexpected happen?" "What happened?" "You should be on the Mobi now, Yoi," Marco asked. Den mushi's expression changed into that of a mask, and Lucci's voice came out from it. "There are more pirates causing trouble than we thought. It took Ace and I a whole day to completely eliminate them, but we did encounter some trouble." Marco and Whitebeard looked at each other, then asked, "What's wrong? Do you need our help?" "We found a lot of treasure and need help moving it." Ace's excited voice came from inside. "Yes, that's the situation." Lucci's calm voice sounded, "Our ship can't carry too much." "Gulala. You are worthy of being my son." Whitebeard laughed and was proud of his son. Hey. We will arrive at your island tomorrow morning," Marco said with a smile, shaking his head. Chapter 82. The next day. "Oh my! Those two guys Ace and Lucci have done something great again. I heard that the Toma pirates were completely defeated by them. And they found a lot of treasures. He. We can have the party again." Two white-bearded pirates raised their glasses and talked loudly. Then one of the pirates from Team 2 winked at Ace, who was eating frantically in front of him, with a mysterious smile on his face. He whispered to the pirate who had just talked to him, "Hey! I heard that Dad is planning to let Ace lead our Team 2. "Hey? Really?" When the other pirates heard this, they immediately came over curiously. It should be true. Team 2 has always lacked a captain. Previously, Captain Marco has been leading Team 1 and Team 2. The pirate wearing a tall hat next to him smiled and added, "Ace's strength is obvious to all. If Ace is the captain of Team 2, no one will have any objection." Ace and Lucci stood in the meeting room belonging to the squad captains, with shocked looks on their faces, staring at Whitebeard in shock. Ace was the first to react. He stepped forward and said with a hint of doubt in his voice, "Sorry, please say it again. I think we heard it wrong. We have all decided to let you be the captain of the second team, and Lucci will be your deputy and manage the second team together with you," Marco said with a smile. Ace looked at Marco in shock, then turned to look at Lucci. "Lucci, what do you think?" Lucci had recovered from his shock, and when he heard Ace's voice, he smiled and responded, "I think it's fine. Ace, what do you think?" Ace lowered his head in silence, then looked up at Whitebeard and Marco, and asked, "Can I give you an answer tomorrow?" "Of course." Whitebeard showed a tolerant smile on his face. Ace held a piece of bread in his hand. While chewing the food in his mouth, he said to the person opposite him, "Teach, you have more seniority than me, right?" "Ha ha 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 ha. It's okay. I don't have such ambition." Teach responded with a laugh while eating the cherry pizza in his hand. "Ace, Captain, I'll leave it to you." Lucci was sitting next to Ace, quietly eating the food on the table. When he heard what Teach said, he couldn't help but look up at him, and then continued eating the food in his hand as if nothing had happened. Ace continued to eat the food in his hand, immersed in his own thoughts, and did not give a clear response to Ticky's words. At night, someone knocked on Captain Whitebeard's door. "Come in." Whitebeard responded, and then he looked at Ace curiously. He looked very conflicted. "What's wrong, my son?" Ace lowered his head and was silent for a moment, then he said softly, "If you want me to be your captain of the 2nd Division, I think I should let you know some of my past, and then you can decide whether to continue with this decision." "My thoughts will never change." Whitebeard grinned. "Come and sit down. We have plenty of time to chat." After hearing what his father said, Ace lowered his head and walked to the chair beside Whitebeard's bed and sat down. He raised his head and looked at Whitebeard, his eyes flashing with a dark light, and whispered, "I am Roger's son." "Gulala. I really didn't expect. Your personality is so different from your father's," Whitebeard said with a nonchalant smile. Ace was surprised by Whitebeard's reaction, then protested, "He is your enemy, right? Aren't you going to drive me away?" "Gulala. Is that what you're worried about, little brat?" Whitebeard grinned, "Then I would say it doesn't matter. We are all children of the sea. I don't care whose blood is in your veins, you are yourself." "Gulala." Ace was stunned. He looked at Whitebeard's reaction. He didn't expect it to be so simple. Did he not care at all? Then, with tears in his eyes and a bright smile on his face, he said to Whitebeard, "Thank you, Dad." "Gulala." Whitebeard grinned, "Ace, remember you are my son now, not Roger's. Nothing can change that." "Yet." Ace nodded, his voice choked up, and he felt like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. Lucci stood at the corner of the corridor, silently watching Ace's back as he walked out of his father's room. He knew that Ace had told his father his biggest secret. Lucci stood at the door of Whitebeard's room, his face full of struggle. He didn't know whether he should say that he was different from Ace. Dragon was still alive, and to the world government, his identity might be more threatening than Ace's. "Aren't you coming in?" Whitebeard's voice came from behind the door. A trace of struggle flashed across Lucci's face, then he pushed the door open and walked in, looking at Whitebeard and whispered, "Ace told you about his past, so I thought maybe I should let you know about mine, too." Whitebeard looked at Lucci quietly, waiting for him to continue. "I told you before. I lost some of my memories when I was a child, but I didn't tell you what caused it." Lucci looked up at Whitebeard, then took off the mask on his face and continued, "It may be because I am the son of Dragon. It is also because of this identity that they launched a demon-killing order." "So you have been wearing a mask all the time?" A trace of heartache appeared on Whitebeard's face. He had read the report. It was rumored that the Dragon's son died from the Demon Slayer order. "I don't know what they will do when they find out that the Dragon's son is alive." Lucci paused, then continued, "I don't want you to be threatened by the government because of me. If you want me to leave." Lucci's next words were interrupted by a sudden hug. "Brat! Don't underestimate your dad." Whitebeard gave Lucci a huge hug. "I am Whitebeard. No one can hurt my son, not even the world government." "Dad!" Lucci shouted with emotion. Chapter 83. Ace and Lucci were standing in the captain's meeting room, with all the captains sitting around the conference table. Ace looked at all the captains, then looked at Whitebeard. "So Dad, you still want me to be the captain of the 2nd team?" "Of course." Whitebeard grinned, "You will always be my son." Ace had a smile on his face and nodded. "Okay, I'll do it." Lucci laughed along, then nodded and said with a smile, "I'll help Ace." The other captains cheered happily. After some trouble, the other captains left to do their own work, leaving only Marco and Thatch in the meeting room. "Ace, you are now the captain of Team 2. Marco looked at Ace and said with a smile, then a smirk appeared on his face. "So all the work documents of Team 2 for the past 2 days, please prepare them for me tonight." "Hey!" Ace looked at Marco in shock. "Why do I have to do paperwork? This is what every captain has to do." Marco said with a smile. Ace grabbed his hair in frustration, then looked at Lucci pitifully. Lucci. Lucci quickly smiled and turned to look to the side, pretending not to see Ace's pleading look. Sachi. Ace looked at Thatchy, who was watching the fun on the side, and looked at him with pitiful expression. Thatch avoided Ace's gaze, coughed lightly, grinned and said, "Come on, Ace. Tisk. You guys are so unreliable." Ace said with disdain as he looked at their performance. "What did you say?" Thatch pretended to be angry, then put his arm around Ace's shoulders and took the opportunity to ruffle his hair. Lucci and Marco couldn't help but laugh out loud at their funny actions, and even Dad had a huge smile on his face. Jean Guo was sitting in his office with a newspaper in front of him. He picked it up and looked solemnly at the person in the photo. Ace was squatting steadily on the roof, his palm pressing down on the hat on his head, flames coming out of his shoulders. He turned his head and smirked at the camera, showing off his sharp fangs, and the pirate mark of the Whitebeard pirate was exposed on his back. Another powerful master has joined Whitebeard. They are getting stronger and stronger. Sengoku said seriously. A drop of cold sweat broke out on Garp's forehead, and then he pretended not to hear what Jean Guo said and continued chewing his biscuits. Sengoku glanced at Garp, then slapped the newspaper on the table in front of Vice Admiral Garp, his eyes twitching. "Garp. It's your damn family again." Garp leaned over the newspaper, curiously reading the headline, "Fire Fist Ace becomes commander of the Whitebeard Pirates 2nd Division. Ha 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 ha, you're worthy of being my grandson." Garp tilted his head back and laughed. He laughed so hard that his chest rumbled. "Now is not the time to laugh." Sengoku roared. Garp. On an unknown island somewhere in the New World, a group of drunkards were partying. The red-haired captain grinned and said, "Ha ha ha, you are worthy of being Ace. You are really powerful." Ben Beckman, the vice-captain of the Red Hair Pirates, nodded seriously and looked at the newspaper in his hand. It seems that Whitebeard has conquered him. However, the fact that he became the commander of Whitebeard's 2nd Division so quickly also shows that Whitebeard thinks highly of him. Maybe they want him to be the next Whitebeard. The red-haired man laughed loudly. "Hey!" Ben looked at Shanks in surprise. "Ha ha ha, I was just kidding." Shanks had a mischievous smile on his face before grinning. "Luffy should be leaving soon, right, Ben?" Ben thought of the little boy they met in the East Sea, and a smile appeared on his face. "Maybe soon we will hear all the news about how a certain idiot keeps doing all kinds of stupid things." Shanks laughed loudly, agreeing with Ben. "Achoo!" Luffy sneezed and rubbed his nose. Chi looked at him and asked worriedly, "Are you okay, Luffy? Are you sick?" Luffy shook his head firmly and said, "I've never been sick before. Someone must be talking about me." "Ha ha ha, is that so?" Chi said with a smile, and then teased, "Don't get sick in the first few months before we set sail, Captain." "I won't." Luffy shouted angrily, and then as if he had thought of something, he said seriously, "I'm talking to you, as the captain, I have to say something to you. Did you sneak out to eat delicious meat at night?" "Hey!" Chi blinked in confusion. "You smell like meat every morning, and I never see you sleeping at night." Luffy said as a matter of course, and then said angrily, "The most important thing is that you didn't give me meat." Chi scratched his cheek. Although it was true that he couldn't see him at night, after all, he was recovering his strength in Luffy's shadow at night, but the smell of meat was obviously because his nose was too sensitive. It was just that when he entered his shadow, he was contaminated with the smell of meat that had just been eaten on his body, and he actually smelled it. Chi complained silently in his heart. "I'm preparing our food," Chi said guiltily. "Suga." Luffy forgave him instantly when he heard the food, and then a huge smile appeared on his face. "Then let me, the captain, try it first to see if it tastes good." Chi looked at the obvious thoughts on Luffy's face, and instantly showed his shark teeth and yelled at Luffy, "You're being too obvious, brat. Hey! Hey! I'm leaving soon. Won't you come and see me off?" Luffy leaned on the door, stuck his head out and asked with a smile at Dodden, who was sitting inside. "Even if the village chief and Makina don't care, the other guys in Windmill Village will definitely be scared. If I go down the mountain," Dodden said while sitting on the floor with his back to Luffy, and then shouted angrily, "If you want to leave, just leave now." "Well, thank you all for your care all the time." Luffy raised his hands and shouted with a bright smile on his face. "No need, it would be embarrassing to say thank you or something." The bandits scratched the back of their heads embarrassedly. Don't say such sour words. Dodden said awkwardly. Dodden. I hate bandits the most. Luffy had a huge smile on his face. Stop making so much noise, you little bastard. Dodden shouted angrily. But I like you guys very much. Luffy shouted with a smile. Wow. Dodden excitedly took out a handkerchief from his pocket to wipe his tears, crying, Stop talking nonsense, go away quickly. Bastard. Really, everyone is like this. What's wrong? Are you crying? Luffy said innocently. I told you I didn't cry. Wow. Dodden retorted, crying. East Island, Goa Kingdom border Windmill Village. Luffy, here. Chi waved and shouted to Luffy who was running. Oh. Hey. Luffy. Just use my old fishing boat, your boat is too small. The villagers on the shore shouted. Hey. We worked hard to make this. Chi grumbled quietly, although it is indeed a little small, it is not professional after all. No, this will do. I'll start sailing from here. Luffy responded with a smile, he turned to look at Chi and said with a smile we are finally sailing. Yes. Chi smiled and looked at the sea. Luffy then looked towards the sea, a huge smile on his face, and shouted to the sky Lucci, Sabo, look. I'm finally out to sea. Chi smiled at Luffy with a doting smile on his face, he had seen it. Chapter 84. Sabo and Lucci are first, Ace is second. I may be third, but I won't lose. Luffy held down his straw hat with his hand, a determined smile on his face, just wait and see, Ace. I will catch up with you soon. Luffy, what's going on? You're yelling and muttering to yourself. Are you chanting some spell? The villager asked Luffy with a smile. It's not a spell. It's a challenge. Luffy shouted angrily. Who is Ace? One of the villagers murmured in confusion. Then. I'm leaving. Luffy shouted. Goodbye. Chi waved to the people on the shore. Goo. Suddenly a huge sea monster emerged from the water. Wow, it's the Lord of the Near Sea. The villagers exclaimed danger. Come back Luffy. Chi looked at Luffy with a smile, not caring about the sea beast in front of him. You've shown up. Lord of the Near Sea. Luffy held down the hat on his head with an excited smile on his face. You've picked the wrong opponent. I'll show you the kung fu I've practiced for 10 years. Rubber, rubber. Luffy stretched his right fist back and swung it towards the Lord of the Near Sea, gun. Wow. The villagers looked at the Lord of the Sea who was knocked down by Luffy and exclaimed, it's amazing. He knocked the Lord of the Sea down with just one punch. Okay, let's go. I want to be the Pirate King. Luffy raised his arms and shouted with a huge smile on his face. Chi looked at the sea with a huge smile on his face. Captain, which way are we going? Ah, the ocean will determine where we go. Luffy smiled. Ki's smile froze, he slowly turned his head to look at Luffy, and shouted in disbelief, is this the sailing you mentioned? Ha 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 ha. Luffy laughed loudly, as if he found Ki's expression very funny. I can't believe I actually believed you when you said you could sail. Chi said in annoyance. This is interesting, an unknown adventure. Luffy said excitedly. Chi shook his head with a helpless smile on his face, you really know how to create surprises, Luffy. The weather is very nice today. Luffy said with a smile while holding the paddle. Yes, but I didn't expect there would be no wind. Chi said helplessly as he looked at the quiet sea. I didn't expect that our ship would run aground in such good weather. Luffy laughed. Chi stared at the sea in confusion. Why did he feel that the water flow was getting faster? He stood up and looked at the sea not far away. The water seemed to be gathering in one place. Oh no! What's wrong? Luffy asked confusedly. Row quickly, Luffy. Chi picked up the paddle and slid backwards quickly. There is a big whirlpool ahead. We need to leave the sea area as soon as possible. Wow! I can't swim. Luffy said with a smile. Idiot, row faster. Chi shouted at Luffy. Wow! A wave suddenly hit him, and Chi hurriedly grabbed Luffy's arm to prevent him from falling. Phew! I'm saved. Luffy said thankfully while lying on the edge of the boat. There's nothing we can do. We've already entered the edge of the vortex. Chi said helplessly as he looked at the huge vortex in front of him. Then he found the bucket they used to store food in the corner and said with a smile, got it. What are you doing? Luffy looked at Chi in confusion. Fortunately there is a bucket. Kira picked up Luffy's limp body from the sea water and tried to stuff him into the bucket where food was stored. Luffy, go in. The food inside is for you to eat. Really? That's great. Luffy immediately became excited and jumped into the barrel on his own initiative. He immediately sealed the barrel, and then it was my turn. The moment the wave hit him, he turned his body into a shadow and automatically entered Luffy in the barrel. I hope Luffy won't cause too much trouble. Chi fell asleep with the last thought. On an island on the edge of the East China Sea, a ship is docked on the shore. The bow of the ship is a flat duck-shaped sculpture, and a skull flag with a peach heart is hung on the top of the main mast. The same peach heart symbol is painted on the rest of the sails. The owner of the ship is the female pirate Alrita, who owns 500 million Baileys. This is the base of this pirate group. A stout woman stood on the deck. She had obvious freckles on her face and held a mace in her right hand. She liked cleanliness. She was inspecting the work of her crew. The other pirates stood aside in panic. Alrita touched the railing of the boat, looked at the dust on her hands and asked, "Why is there so much dust?" "I'm so sorry, Miss Alrita. I've already cleaned this ship from beginning to end." A pirate explained hastily and horribly, "I will clean it again right away. Please forgive me." "Please don't." "What else?" Alrita had a ferocious expression on her face. "Please don't use the mace. I don't want to die yet." Boom. Before the pirate could finish, Alrita used the mace in her hand to knock him away. Then she turned to look at the pink-haired boy wearing thick glasses hiding in the corner. "Kobe, what is the most beautiful thing in the sea?" "Of course it is." Kobe's face was covered with cold sweat, and he stammered, "Of course it's you, Miss Alrita." "He he he. Right. That's why I hate those dirty things the most. I'm so beautiful, of course I have to have an equally beautiful ship." "Right." Alrita looked at Kobe with sharp eyes, "Because you know more about sailing than others, I've kept you until now. Other than that, you're useless. Clean my shoes quickly." Yes, thank you, miss." Kobe knelt on the ground, shaking and saying in fear, I'll wipe it right away. You have to clean it spotlessly." Alrita ordered, and then she kicked Kobe away from her feet. Forget it, you are such a waste." Kobe covered his cheeks and curled up in pain. Kobe endured the pain and responded, "Yes. I'm very sorry. Instead of spending time apologizing there, you might as well go clean the toilet." Alrita said sternly. "Yes, sir. I'll go right away, Miss Alrita." Kobe bowed humbly and flatteringly, then walked off the boat in frustration. "Hey!" Kobe looked at the barrel floating from the sea. It seemed that there was still wine in it. He brought the barrel ashore and rolled it towards the warehouse on the island. "It's so heavy." "What? You said a wine barrel floated down from the sea?" The pirate who was cleaning the warehouse said in surprise. Yes, it looks like there is still wine in it." "What should we do with this?" Kobe stuttered. "Well done. Let's drink it all up," said a blonde pirate who was cleaning the warehouse greedily. "But, if the boss finds out, we will." The pirate standing at the door said hesitantly. "He won't know." A pirate in a striped shirt smiled evilly. "The only ones who know about this are a few of us who clean the wine warehouse and a cowardly Kobe. There are only 4 of us in total." "That makes sense." The other 2 pirates said with a smile. "You know what to do, Kobe." Yes, I didn't see anything. So please don't hit me." Kobe waved his hands hurriedly, his voice trembling. Ah! The wine barrel that the pirates were surrounding suddenly broke open, and a black-haired boy wearing a straw hat suddenly jumped out of it. The pirates were frightened and retreated back. "What? You slept so well." Luffy raised his arms and laughed, "Looks like I'm saved. I almost thought I was going to die in the sea. Ha 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 ha." "Hey!" Luffy looked at his men in confusion, holding onto the edge of the barrel. "Who are you? Who are you? Why would someone come out of a wine barrel?" The pirates roared angrily. Chapter 85. Don't be lazy. A mace suddenly flew over and broke the wine warehouse, knocking the pirates who were talking away. Wow! Luffy, who was still in the wine barrel, was blown into the forest along with the barrel. Luffy rolled the barrel, trying to get out of it, when suddenly a figure stood in front of him. "Excuse me, are you okay? You were just knocked quite far away." Kobe asked worriedly while looking at the boy in the wine barrel. "Ha ha ha. I'm fine, I just got scared." Luffy said with a smile, "My name is Luffy, where is this?" "This coast is where the pirate Alrita rests. I'm a handyman on her ship. My name is Kobe." Kobe explained. "Oh, I see. Actually these things are not important at all," Luffy said as he got out of the barrel. "Hey." Kobe looked embarrassed. "Ah. By the way, did you see anyone else?" "A man with black hair, his name is Chi." Luffy asked with a smile, "By the way, do you have a boat you can give me? My boat seems to have been swept away by a whirlpool." "Whirlpool? You encountered a whirlpool?" Kobe said in shock. "Yeah, that really scared me, but out of curiosity, he helped me hide in the bucket, so I didn't fall into the water." Luffy crossed his arms and sighed. Most people would have died long ago. Kobe took out a handkerchief and wiped the sweat from his forehead. "If you want a boat, I have one, but..." "Really? Then take me there." Luffy said excitedly, "I still want to find Chi." Kobe brought Luffy to a hidden corner of the forest, where a broken boat was lying quietly. Luffy and Kobe stood in front of it. "What is this?" Luffy frowned in confusion. "A coffin. It's a small boat, after all. I spent 2 years secretly building it." Kobe twisted his fingers and said anxiously. "It took 2 years, you don't want it?" Luffy asked puzzledly. "Yes, I don't want it anymore. I built it to escape, but I never found the courage to run away. It seems that I will do odd jobs for the rest of my life." Kobe said frustratedly while grabbing the edge of the boat. "Actually, I also have things I want to do." "Then why don't you just run away?" Luffy said directly. "No. No, Miss Alrita will kill me." Kobe shook his head frantically and said in horror, "That was the day that changed my destiny. I was just preparing to go fishing as usual, but I got on the wrong ship. In order to save my life, I worked as a navigator and handyman on that pirate ship for 2 years." "You're so stupid and useless," Luffy said with a smile, "and you're also a coward. I hate you." "Ha ha ha ha. Ha, ha ha ha." Kobe looked shocked. "You're right. If I had the courage like you." Kobe quickly cheered up and asked about Luffy's situation. "By the way, Luffy, why did you go out to sea?" "As for me," Luffy said with a huge smile on his face, as if he was not talking about a dream, but a confirmed fact, "I want to be the Pirate King." What? Kobe shouted in shock, "So you're looking for the great treasure One Piece that contains wealth, fame, and power?" "Yeah." Luffy responded casually while sitting on the boat. "You're going to die, pirates all over the world are fighting for that treasure." Kobe yelled in horror. "I'm going to fight for it too," Luffy said as a matter of course. "What? No. Impossible. Absolutely impossible." Kobe denied frantically. Boom. Luffy punched Kobe to stop him from shaking his head madly. "It hurts." Kobe covered his injured head and said, "Why did you hit me?" "I suddenly want to fight," Luffy said innocently, then patted his clothes and stood up. He took off the hat on his head and looked at the hat in his hand. "I have decided to be the Pirate King. I don't mind even if I lose my life for it." What a great determination, not even afraid of death. Kobe looked at Luffy in shock, then looked down at his hands and murmured, Can I do it too?" "Hey? What do you want to do?" Luffy turned and looked at Kobe in confusion. "Can someone like me join the navy?" Kobe looked at Luffy with tears in his eyes, as if this could give him courage. He closed his eyes and shouted to Luffy, "My dream since childhood is to join the navy and catch all the bad guys. Can I succeed?" "How should I know?" Luffy said with a smile. "No, I'm going to try. I will definitely succeed. Instead of living my whole life like this, I might as well escape from here at the risk of my life, and then, capture Miss Alrita." Kobe shouted firmly. "Kobe! Who are you going to catch?" Alrita suddenly raised her mace and smashed the boat into pieces. "Wow! Miss Alrita!" Kobe looked at Alrita in horror. "Do you think you can escape?" Alrita smiled ferociously. "Is that guy the bounty hunter who came to take my head? He doesn't look like Roronoa Zoro." After Alrita found out that it wasn't Zoro, she stopped caring about Luffy and turned to look at Koby with an evil smile on her face. Koby, let me ask you one last time, what is the most beautiful thing in this ocean? Ha, ha ha, of course it is. Koby said in horror. Who is this ant? Luffy interrupted Koby and asked casually. Koby and Alrita's pirates looked at Luffy in horror. What did you say? Alrita shouted angrily with a ferocious look on her face. Luffy! Take back what you said. Koby shook Luffy's shoulders in horror. Luffy just looked at Koby quietly. Koby looked at Luffy's expression, and remembered his determination just now. He shouted in horror, Ms. Alrita is the most brutal and hateful ant. What? Koby looked at Alrita's horrified expression, trembling constantly, and tried to comfort himself. Don't regret it, I don't regret it. You little brat! Go to hell! Alrita swung the mace and angrily hit Koby. Luffy quickly stood in front of Koby and blocked the attack for him, with a huge smile on his face. This doesn't work on me. Because I'm a rubber man. Then Luffy stretched his right arm back and punched Alrita in the face. In an instant, Alrita's huge body lost consciousness and flew backwards. The hands have grown longer. Boss! Miss Alrita actually lost. This guy is a monster. The pirates screamed in fear. Give Koby a ship. Luffy pointed at the pirate and said seriously, he wants to join the navy. You guys just watch and don't stop him. Yes, yes sir. The pirates responded nervously. Nay hey hee hee. Luffy showed a huge smile on his face. Luffy. Koby looked at Luffy with emotion. Luffy, you actually ate the rubber fruit. How surprising. Koby exclaimed in surprise while rowing the boat. Yes. But if you want to find One Piece, you must enter the Grand Line, said Koby. That's right. But that place is called the Pirates' Graveyard. Koby said in horror. Yeah, so I'm going to find a powerful partner to go with us. Luffy said with a smile. Do you know where Roronoa Zoro is? Chapter 86. R.O. Roronoa? It seems he was captured by the Navy, at the naval base we are about to go to. Koby replied. What? So weak. Luffy said with a smile, if he's a good guy, I want him to be our partner. We. Koby suddenly noticed Luffy's choice of words and asked in confusion, are there others? Of course, there is also Chi, he is my vice-captain. Luffy said with a smile, and then suddenly seemed to think of something, and shouted in shock, by the way, Chi is gone. What? Koby shouted in surprise. But it doesn't matter. He often disappears and then suddenly appears in front of me. Luffy said with a smile. Really don't worry. Koby asked doubtfully. Well, Chi is very strong, stronger than me. He wins more often during every training. Luffy said with a smile, and then said firmly, I will be stronger than Chi in the future. Someone stronger than Luffy. Koby murmured, I'm curious about what he looks like. The devil. Luffy said puzzledly while sitting on the bow of the ship. That's right, Luffy. Roronoa, also known as the Pirate Hunter, is a very scary man. Rumor has it that he is like a bloodthirsty wild dog, wandering the sea all day long. Everyone says that he is a devil in human skin. Koby said seriously, trying to stop Luffy from wanting such a person to be his partner. So, don't even think about wanting him to be your partner. I haven't decided yet whether I want him to be my partner. Luffy said with a smile, as long as he is a good person. That's why he was caught by the Navy, because he is a bad guy. Koby retorted. Oh. We're finally at the naval base. Luffy said excitedly. Yeah, we're finally here. Kirby said with a smile. You are so awesome, Koby. You actually got here. Luffy said with a smile. What? This is a necessary skill for people who go to sea. Koby explained helplessly, and then said worriedly, Luffy, if you drift every time you go to sea, you can't be a pirate. At least you have to find a navigator first. Okay, let's do it. Let's eat first. Luffy said with a smile, and then ran excitedly towards the fragrance he smelled. After eating and drinking, Luffy looked at Koby and said with a smile, then Koby, let's separate here. You have to join the Navy and become an excellent Marine. Yes. Thank you Mr. Luffy. Koby cried and thanked. By the way, I wonder if that guy named Zoro is in this base. Luffy said with a smile, touching his full stomach. Bang! Bang! Hey! Luffy and Kobe looked at the crowd who were suddenly frightened in confusion. It seems that mentioning Zoro is taboo here. Kobe whispered to Luffy. Oh, Luffy responded without any expression. I took a look when I passed by the announcement just now, and there is a colonel named Morgan here. Kirby said with a smile. Bang! 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 Wow! What? Luffy and Kobe looked at the crowd in surprise as they were frightened once again. Ha ha ha, that store is really interesting. I want to go there again later. Luffy laughed while holding his stomach as he walked. It's so weird. I'm feeling more and more uneasy. Kobe said uneasily, I can understand that you're scared when you hear the name of Luo Luonyo Yan, but why would you be scared when you hear the name of a navy captain? Maybe he did something bad. Luffy said with a smile as he walked. Impossible, this is impossible. Kobe retorted emotionally. The navy would never do anything to harm the civilians. Can such a navy still be considered a navy? Luffy looked at the huge naval base in front of him, smiled and said to Kobe, Go, Kobe. But I'm not ready yet, and just now. Before Kobe could finish his words, Luffy had already jumped onto the wall and stretched his head to look inside the naval base, looking curiously, where is the devil? It's not that easy for you to find him. He might be locked up in a cell. Not necessarily. I think I saw something. Come here. Luffy smiled and walked towards the other side of the wall. It's that guy. Luffy said with a smile, lying on the wall. Yes, it's Roronoa Zoro. The black headscarf and the green waistcoat. When Kobe saw the look in Roronoa's eyes, he was so scared that he fell off the wall. What's wrong? Luffy looked down at Kobe in confusion. Wow, what a intimidating aura. That's Zoro. Kobe explained breathlessly with a look of horror on his face. Is he Zoro? Luffy looked at the man tied to the cross with ropes and asked in confusion, that rope looks like it can be broken easily. Stop joking. If we let that guy escape, not only will the people in the town be in trouble, but you might even be killed. Kobe screamed in horror when he heard Luffy's words. He didn't want his first friend to die because of his recklessness. Zoro was tired of waiting for a month, he didn't like staying here, but he promised, he would keep his promise. His groggy thoughts were broken by a sharp voice. He opened his tired eyes and looked up in the direction of the voice. He found two heads popping out of the wall and looking at him. Hey! Kid over there! Zoro grinned. Hey! Luffy looked at the tied-up people in the square in confusion. Come and help me, untie this rope, please? I've been tied up for 9 days and I'm exhausted. He grinned. He really wanted to stretch his muscles. Those guys tied me too tightly. Look, that guy is smiling. Luffy looked at the smile on the blood-stained face. I will thank you. The reward will be yours after you catch the wanted criminal. A cruel smile appeared on his face. He could see that the boy in the straw hat had wavered, but the pink-haired boy next to him tried to warn him, I never lie and I always keep my promises. No. We can't be fooled by him, Luffy. He will definitely kill us after he escapes. Kobe said in panic. You won't be killed. Luffy said with a smile, because I am very powerful. Okay. A little girl suddenly climbed up from beside Kobe with a ladder. She looked around the yard and saw that there was no one around. So she hung a rope, slid down along the rope, and walked towards Zoro. Hey, this is dangerous. Kobe shouted at the little girl's back. Luffy, go stop her, she will be killed. Kobe said anxiously to Luffy. If you want to stop it, just go by yourself. Luffy said strangely. You're looking for death, kid. Get out of here. Zoro shouted angrily at the child in front of him. He didn't want her to stay here. If she was discovered by the Navy, he would not be able to break free from the ropes to help her. I made rice balls for you, big brother. You've been tied up the whole time, so you must be very hungry. Although it's my first time making rice balls, I tried really hard. The little girl said with a smile, holding the rice ball. I'm not hungry at all. Zoro said sternly, go back quickly, or I will kill you. Hey! Hey! Don't be so fierce. A blond man in a suit walked in with 2 Marines. Kobe looked at the Marine behind him and breathed a sigh of relief. He must be someone important, he will save the girl, she is safe now. Then he saw the worst thing, the blonde man threw the girl's rice ball to the ground and stomped on it hard. Even when the girl cried and begged him, he did not stop. Kobe was so shocked by the development of this incident that he could not speak. Luffy watched the blonde man's actions quietly until the man ordered the marines to throw the girl over the wall, and he reached out and grabbed the girl. Chapter 87. Kobe quickly took the girl from Luffy and asked worriedly, "Are you okay? Those guys are really too much." Luffy listened to the noises in the wall, climbed up, and walked in front of Zoro. He looked into his eyes. He could see the anger in his eyes. Zoro could feel the boy in the straw hat on the wall standing in front of him. "You're still here?" He looked up at the boy. When he met his big brown eyes, he was silent. At that moment, he could only see pure curiosity in his eyes. There was no fear or judgment. Subconsciously, he reminded him, "If he finds you staying here, he will tell his dad." "Really?" Luffy grinned. "I'm Luffy. I'm looking for a partner to be a pirate with me. How about you join me?" "Hey? Pirate?" Zoro raised his eyebrows and said disdainfully, "You actually degraded yourself to become a bad guy." "This is my wish. There's nothing wrong with being a pirate," Luffy said with a smile. "Are you going to let me go and let me help you?" Zoro grinned. "Let me be frank with you. I won't agree to your request because I still have something important to do." Zoro looked at the bright smile on his face and continued to explain, "Even if you don't help me untie the rope, I can survive on my own. As long as I can live for a full month, that guy will let me go as agreed." "Really?" Luffy grinned. "The most important thing now is to find a way to survive and then complete what I want to do." Zoro showed a determined smile on his face. "If it were me, I would starve to death in a week, ha ha ha," Luffy said with a laugh. "I'm different from you. You should find a partner somewhere else." Zoro looked at Luffy's back and hesitated for a moment. "Hey, wait a minute." "Hey." Luffy looked back in confusion. Can you pick it up for me?" Zoro said hesitantly. Luffy looked at the dirty rice ball on the ground and picked it up. "Are you going to eat this? You can't be that hungry. This has turned into mud. Stop talking nonsense, take everything that fell on the ground." Zoro opened his mouth wide and motioned Luffy to put the food in. Even though it was full of mud and stones, he still chewed it. Even though he choked, he still swallowed it. Luffy crossed his arms and looked at Zoro's difficult swallowing behavior, and said directly, "So I said, do you want to commit suicide? Hey! Can you tell that kid a message for me?" "What?" "Tell the girl that the rice balls taste delicious, thank you very much." Zoro showed a big smile on his face. Haha. Luffy had a big smile on his face and decided that he wanted him to be his partner. "Really?" "Yet." He ate all the rice balls with relish. Luffy said happily to the girl. "That's great." The girl shouted happily. Is he really the villain in the legend?" Kobe asked in confusion. "Of course not." The girl said angrily, and then explained, "Big brother just wanted to save me. Colonel Morgan's son was wandering around the town with a wolf that day. Everyone was very scared. Big brother killed the wolf to save me, and then Big brother was caught by Colonel Morgan's son. So, Zoro was captured just because he killed the wolf that guy raised." Luffy asked confusedly. "Yes. It's all Colonel Morgan's son's fault," said the girl angrily. He, kneel down, everyone. Or do you want to end up like Roronoa?" Colonel Morgan's son said proudly as he led the navy down the street. "In 3 days, I will publicly execute him." 3 days later. Luffy said in confusion after hearing his words. Then he stood in front of Colonel Morgan's son and asked in confusion, "Don't you have an agreement for 1 month?" That was obviously a joke. That guy was as dumb as a beast, he actually believed it. He laughed loudly. Luffy looked at his smug expression, clenched his fist and waved it at him angrily, then a serious expression appeared on his face. "Kobe, I've decided, I must make Zoro my partner." "Hello." Luffy raised his hand and greeted Zoro with a smile. "Why are you here again? If you want to persuade me to become a pirate, just give up the idea." Zoro sighed. "What does it matter? You've been regarded as a bad guy anyway." Luffy said unconvinced. "I don't care what anyone says. I've never done anything that would go against my beliefs and make me regret it, and I won't do it in the future." He was tired of this conversation, and he said directly, "So I won't be a pirate." Luffy looked at Zoro in silence, then pouted angrily and said, I don't care, I have decided that you want to be my partner. Don't act on your own. Zoro shouted angrily. You use a knife, right? Luffy asked with a smile. Well, if I wasn't tied up I would indeed. Zoro was a little confused as to how this boy knew he could use a knife. He didn't look like the kind of person who would pry for information. Where's the sword? Luffy asked. That bastard took it away. It was second only to my life, my treasure, said Zoro angrily. Oh. Baby. That's important. Luffy nodded and said seriously. Then he seemed to have thought of a good idea and said with a smile, if you want your sword, you have to be my partner, ha ha ha. Asshole. Zoro shouted in disbelief, you are so despicable. Okay. I'll get it right away. Luffy ran excitedly into the naval base. Hey, don't go. Zoro tried to stop him, but before he succeeded, the guy had already entered the naval base. Is that guy planning to sneak into the naval base? What an idiot. Looking at the guy's back as he left, he couldn't help but sigh. Today was definitely the strangest day he had ever spent on this island. It wasn't that he didn't want to be free, he just wanted to keep his promise, and he wanted to see what happened to Kuina's sword. If he lost it, he would never forgive himself. Where's Luffy? Zoro lowered his head and looked at the person standing in front of him. It was the boy with pink hair who was with Luffy before. He responded nonchalantly, Luffy went to the naval base. Ah! Luffy broke into the base camp. Kobe shouted in shock, then sighed and said helplessly, he's making trouble again. By the way, my name is Kobe. He didn't bother to explain why he was going, but when he saw the boy trying to untie him, he began to be surprised, and then he warned him, hey. If you save me, you will die too. They have no reason to arrest you. I can't stand this kind of navy anymore. Kobe shouted angrily while untying the rope, I must become a righteous navy. Just like Luffy wants to become the Pirate King. What? Zoro was shocked by the boy's dream, this kid must be kidding, right? He. I was surprised too. But he's serious, that's just the kind of person he is. Kobe laughed nervously. Wow! A bullet suddenly hit Kobe's shoulder, causing his body to fall backwards. Are you okay? Zoro asked worriedly. He turned to look at the navy coming over here and said to Kobe, run away quickly. They will be coming here soon. Chapter 88. Ah! Kobe cried out in pain from the wound on his shoulder, but when he heard Zoro telling him to leave, he refused and tried to stand up. I'm going to untie you. Don't worry about me, I'll be fine as long as I hold on for a month. Zoro persuaded. There was no need to risk his life for him. He only needed to stay for a month and he could leave. Go now. You won't be saved. You will be executed in 3 days. Kobe tried to control his shaking body and walked towards Zoro tremblingly. He cried and shouted, he has no intention of keeping the agreement. No. No way. Zoro was shocked at their shamelessness and angry at himself for believing these people so easily. The navy is your enemy now, please. Please go help Luffy after the rope is untied. Kobe cried, I won't ask you to be a pirate, but, he is my savior, I don't want to lose him. Luffy is very strong, as long as you join forces, you can definitely escape from here. Zoro looked at Kobe, he didn't say anything, he only knew one thing, that was he couldn't die here, he still had a promise to fulfill, for which he would do anything to keep himself alive, even if that meant becoming a villain. Surround them. Colonel Morgan ordered. How interesting. Are you three planning a coup? Roronoa Zoro, your name is well known. But don't underestimate me. Your power is insignificant in front of my greatness. Preparation. Zoro stared at the gun pointed at him. He suddenly realized that he was so close to death, but he made a promise. He couldn't die, absolutely not in a place like this. He had something important to do. He had promised Kuina. He would become the world's #1 swordsman. He absolutely couldn't die in a place like this. Shooting. Rubber, rocket. Hey! You! Zoro couldn't believe that the boy actually sacrificed himself so that he and Kobe could survive. Luffy! Kobe cried as he looked at Luffy's back standing in front of him. The guy wearing a straw hat. Morgan looked at the straw hat that suddenly appeared, and veins popped out on his forehead. Hey! Luffy curled up his body, and the bullets in his body continued to extend backwards. Then he shouted, "It's useless." He stretched out his body and bounced all the bullets, hitting him back. The Navy men screamed in fright at the sudden reflection of the bullet. Ha 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 ha! Luffy laughed, seemingly satisfied with the chaos he had caused. Who the hell are you? Zoro shouted in shock. I am, the man who will become the Pirate King. Luffy shouted with a smile, announcing his dream to the world. This is your treasure. Luffy took off the 3 swords on his back and handed them to Zoro, saying with a smile, I couldn't figure out which one was yours, so I brought all 3. All 3 are mine. I'm a 3-sword master, said Zoro. Wow, that's cool. Luffy smiled and held the sword while looking at the Marines standing aside. So now you want to join me in fighting the Marines and become a wanted villain by the government, or do you want to die here? Make your choice. You are the son of the devil. Zoro grinned. It doesn't matter. Instead of being beaten to death here, I'd rather be a pirate with you. Oh. That's great. You agree to be my partner? Luffy raised his hands and shouted excitedly. Yes, yes, please help me untie the rope. Zoro responded helplessly. Who is that guy? He actually bounced the bullet back. The Navy said in surprise as he looked at the people in the square. That kid is not an ordinary person. He must have eaten the legendary devil fruit, Morgan said solemnly. Colonel, he is untying Sauron's rope. One of the Marines said in horror. Stop him. Morgan ordered. If the gun doesn't work on him, then use the knife. Hey! Stop dawdling. Help me untie it. Zoro shouted in despair at the Navy rushing towards him. Damn it, this knot is impossible to untie. Luffy wailed while pulling the rope. Hey! Stop wasting time. Zoro shouted as the Marines were approaching them. Wait a minute, stop making noise. Luffy muttered as he carefully untied the rope. How can I wait in this situation? Zoro shouted angrily. Did I faint? What on earth happened? Kobe sat up, holding his head. When he looked up, he saw a terrifying scene. Countless Marines were approaching Luffy and his friends with knives in hand. Luffy, Zoro. Danger. Oh. Finally one hand is untied. Luffy said happily as he looked at the untied rope on his hand. Idiot. Give me the knife. Zoro shouted to Luffy anxiously. The moment Zoro got the knife, he cut the rope on his hands, and then immediately used the knife to block all the Marines who were swinging their swords at him. Wow! That's so cool! Luffy shouted happily. Zoro heard Luffy's voice. He glanced at the group of Marines that he was blocking and said, Stand still. If you dare to move, I will kill you. How terrifying! The Navy members were almost crying due to being scared by Zoro's beast-like eyes. I promised you that I would be a pirate. Since I am going against the Navy, I am a bad guy, but I have my own ambitions. Zoro looked at Luffy, I want to be the world's #1 swordsman. At this point, I no longer care about my reputation. Whether it is a bad name or a good name, I want the whole world to know my name. He pushed aside all the Marines and asked them to step aside. He looked at the boy in front of him and said seriously, You are the one who made me become a pirate. So if you dare to force me to give up my dream, then I want you to commit seppuku in front of me to make amends. Nihihi. The world's best swordsman, not bad. Luffy grinned and said, the partner of the Pirate King, at least he should be like this. What are you daydreaming about? Execute those guys now. Morgan shouted angrily. Zoro. Crouch. Luffy grinned, then he swung his feet back rubber, whip. Zoro subconsciously did as Luffy asked, and then he was shocked to see Luffy kicking the Marines with his longer legs, knocking them all to the ground. What on earth are you? Zoro said in shock. I'm the rubber man. Luffy proudly showed them. Colonel. We are no match for them. What's more, even Roronoa is involved. We can't defeat them at all. Those guys who showed weakness just now, shoot yourselves. Colonel Morgan said cruelly, I don't need useless subordinates. This is an order. Zoro looked at the Navy in shock. They actually followed orders and prepared to shoot themselves. There is something wrong with this army. Luffy. Let's destroy this Navy as soon as possible. Kobe shouted in pain. Luffy jumped over the Marines and swung at Colonel Morgan, who blocked Luffy's attack with the large axe in his right hand. Luffy grinned at Colonel Morgan and continued his attack with more strength, pushing his large body aside and spinning around to kick Morgan's head hard with his legs. Stop! Luffy turned his head and saw that his stupid son was holding Kobe hostage, but he did not stop his actions and continued to punch Morgan in the face. I told you to stop. Luffy. I don't want to be a burden to you. Even if I die. Kobe shouted. Haha, I know. Luffy grinned, looking at his stupid son, then swung his right arm and said with a smile, Give up, stupid son, Kobe is serious. Rubber rubber. Colonel Morgan raised his axe in his right hand and stood behind Luffy, shouting angrily, I am a Marine Colonel. Luffy punched his stupid son next to Kobe gun. Zoro immediately stood behind Luffy and blocked Morgan's attack with his sword. Zoro! Luffy shouted with a smile, and then knocked Morgan away with one blow. It's a piece of cake, Captain. Zoro grinned. Chapter 89. The Colonel actually lost. Colonel Morgan has fallen. Great. Liberated. Zoro and Luffy watched in amazement as the Marines threw their weapons and hats into the air and jumped for joy, thinking they would still have to fight them. Why are they so happy even though the Colonel was knocked down? Luffy asked confusedly. It turns out that everyone is doing this because they are afraid of Morgan. Kobe said happily. They all have their reasons for doing this. Seeing Zoro suddenly twitching and falling, Luffy called out in confusion, Zoro. Are you okay? Kobe was startled. I'm just hungry. Zoro said weakly. Haha, I'm so full. Zoro smiled as he covered his full stomach. 9 days without eating is really the limit. Luffy took the fork and rolled all the food into his mouth and chewed it. Hearing Zoro's sigh, he said bluntly, so you can't last a month. How can you eat more than me? Zoro pointed at the stacked plates next to Luffy and raised his eyebrows in confusion. After all, he hadn't eaten for 9 days, but Luffy must have eaten more than twice as much as him, and he was still eating. Sorry, you treated me too. Kobe said shyly to the proprietress, touching his head. It's okay, you are the heroes who saved the town. The proprietress said happily, then she looked at the residents watching from the window and said with a smile, the people in the town are very grateful to you. Big brother, you are really awesome. The girl said happily. Yeah, I'm awesome. Luffy chewed the food in his mouth, happily agreed, and said with a grin, I'll be even more awesome in the future. I already have my own team now. Zoro leaned back in his chair and looked at Luffy, smiling and asking, so, how many people have you gathered besides me? Since you announced that you want to be the Pirate King, you should have gathered quite a few people. Luffy stuffed the meat in his hand into his mouth, then said with a smile, 2. Hey! Zoro looked at Luffy in shock. Are we the only 2? No, there's also Chi, although I don't know where he went. Luffy said casually, and then happily took a big bite of meat. Zoro covered his face with a headache. Should he be glad that this was not a pirate group with only 2 people? Zoro asked expectantly, what about the ship? You should have a very big ship. He really hoped that the boy had one. That's it. Luffy pointed out the window with a fork in his hand. Zoro looked in the direction the boy pointed with some expectation, but there was only a dilapidated boat there. He asked in disbelief, that one? We'll have a ship this big soon. Luffy said as he used his hand to show how big the ship he wanted was. He then laughed excitedly and said, I also want a pirate flag. Zoro couldn't help but laugh at this funny scene. He rubbed his forehead. He felt as if he was on a pirate ship and couldn't get off. Should I really regard this guy as the captain? We will find our partners sooner or later. Luffy said with a smile, and then took a big bite of the meat in his hand. By the way, where are we going next? Asked Zoro. Let's go to the Grand Line. Luffy said excitedly. There are only 2 of you. Going to the Grand Line is like going to die. Kobe said excitedly. He looked at Luffy's indifferent expression and shouted anxiously, Luffy! Are you listening? The strongest pirates in the world are gathered there. Ha ha ha, there's nothing we can do about it. Zoro smiled and leaned back in his chair, as if he was ready to face any challenge at any time. If you want to get One Piece anyway, you have to enter the Grand Line, right? Zoro, are you going too? Kobe said in shock. You're not going anyway. Zoro said helplessly. Although I'm not going, I'm still worried about you guys. Kobe lowered his head and said, Luffy, although I haven't known you for a long time, we can still be considered friends. Of course, even if we break up, we will always be friends. Luffy said with a smile. Really? Kobe smiled happily, looked at Luffy and said gratefully, I have never had many friends since I was a child, let alone friends who can stand up for me, but that's also because I don't fight for it myself. But you taught me to fight for my beliefs. By the way, are you okay? Zoro tapped Kobe's head and reminded him, although you are a handyman, it is an indisputable fact that you have been on the pirate ship for 2 years. Don't underestimate the intelligence capabilities of the Navy. If they know your background, you can't be a Navy anymore. Hey! Kobe was a little at a loss. Excuse me. A man in a Navy uniform and a group of Navy men pushed open the door of the tavern and walked in. He looked at the 3 people in the tavern and asked, I heard that you are pirates. Is this true? It's true. We have already formed a pirate group. Luffy said with a grin. We are all very grateful that you saved the town, but as the Navy, we can't let you stay here any longer. Please leave here immediately. In return, we will not report you to the headquarters. The Navy said seriously. Let's go then, Zoro, Luffy said as he walked towards the door. Wait a minute. The Navy who just spoke stopped them and looked at Kobe standing aside and asked, aren't you guys in the same group? I am not their partner. Kobe said stutteringly with his eyes closed. Is what he said true? The Marine asked. Luffy smiled and turned to Kobe. I know this guy. He once lived with a fat and big pirate on an unknown island. Her name seemed to be Alrita. Stop talking! Kobe shouted, punching Luffy in the face. He didn't want his dream to be destroyed by the person who gave him hope. He couldn't believe that he was betrayed by him. How dare you hit me, you bastard! Luffy shot back with a grin. He threw a few punches back until he was stopped by the Marines shouting. Stop! If you cause trouble in this town again, I won't let you go. The Navy shouted loudly, I already know clearly that you are not my partners, please leave this town immediately. When Luffy turned to leave, Kobe caught a glimpse of the smile on his face. He instantly understood Luffy's actions. He did all this for him. He didn't expect that he would still need Luffy's help even at the last moment. What's the difference from before? If he continues to be so cowardly, he will really be a waste. Kobe straightened his back and said loudly to the Navy chief, please allow me to join the Navy. As long as I can be a Navy soldier, I am willing to do odd jobs or something else. What a terrible acting! Zoro laughed and complained as soon as they walked out of the tavern, it wouldn't be surprising if they were found out. Kobe will definitely take care of the rest. Luffy smiled as he untied the rope of the boat. Luffy! As they untied the ropes, Kobe's voice suddenly came, and Luffy and Zoro turned to look at Kobe who was panting. Thank you! I will never forget what you have done for me! Kirby shouted. This is the first time I hear the Navy thanking pirates. Zoro said with a smile. Nahihihi. See you later, Kobe. Luffy smiled and waved goodbye to Kobe. Chapter 90. Oh, I'm so hungry. Luffy touched his hungry stomach and groaned, leaning his head on the railing of the boat, looking at the sky with bored eyes. Why don't you know any sailing skills at all? This is so weird. Zoro looked at Luffy suspiciously. What's so strange about this? I always drift out to sea. Luffy pouted. Besides, haven't you always been chasing criminals at sea to get the bonus? I went out to sea for one person, but now I can't find the way back to the village. Zoro continued, I had no choice but to attack the surrounding pirates just to earn some living expenses. Oh. So you're lost? Luffy concluded. No. Don't say that. Zoro shouted angrily. It wasn't his fault, the road was moving all the time. Really? There are pirates who can't sail. Really, people will laugh to death. Zoro muttered to himself, didn't you say there was another companion? Can he sail? Is it strange? It doesn't seem so. Luffy said after thinking for a while. Zoro sighed. We can't reach the Grand Line at all. We must find a navigator as a partner first. We also need to find a chef and a musician. Luffy said excitedly, counting on his fingers. Don't worry about that for now. Zoro shouted angrily. I'm hungry. Luffy fell weakly on the deck. Zoro sighed, He had heard this many times and wondered why the boy was so hungry after eating so much. Not to mention they had just left the naval base not long ago. Zoro. There's a bird. Luffy said excitedly, what a big bird, let's eat that bird. Hey? How to eat it? Zoro asked puzzledly as he looked at the bird flying high in the sky. Leave it to me. I will catch it back. Luffy shouted excitedly, then grabbed the mast with both hands and pulled his body back. Rubber rubber, rocket. Luffy bounced his body straight towards the bird and pounced directly on it. So that's it. Zoro suddenly realized, and then he watched his captain's figure getting smaller and smaller, until he found that Luffy's body seemed to be suspended in mid-air, and the altitude seemed to be lower than that of a bird. What? Help! Idiot! Zoro yelled angrily, suddenly realizing that his new captain was an idiot who was caught by a bird. He slid the boat as fast as he could while yelling angrily, what the hell are you doing? You guy! After being carried by the bird for a few minutes, Luffy saw the island below and grinned, hey! Bird, let me down! He was very excited. Below was the first island he would land on during his voyage. He believed that Zoro would find him, just like Chi, so he was not worried about him. When they flew to the middle of the island, Luffy found that the bird did not let him go. At this moment, his intuition told him that something was coming. Bird! Let me down! Luffy began to kick his legs, trying to get rid of the bird, but it was too late. A cannonball hit them, which caused the bird to let him go. Ah! Luffy shouted, he began to fall, and soon he hit the stone road below. Ah! I'm saved! Luffy said with a smile, touching the straw hat on his head. Nami looked at the boy in the straw hat in shock. She had just stolen a map of the Grand Line from the pirates and was blocked by them when suddenly someone fell from the sky and broke the situation of being surrounded. She didn't know what to do now. This boy must be very amazing as he was fine after falling from such a high place. She made up her mind and said sorry. Boss! Boss! Nami looked at the young man with an admiring smile on her face and said happily, you came to save me. I'll leave it to you from now on. After that, without waiting for others to react, she turned around and ran away quickly. When she reached the corner, Nami calmed down and recalled the boy's tender face. She couldn't help but stop running. The boy looked very young and a little stupid. She jumped onto the roof and turned back. She didn't want him to die. If he died because of her, she knew she would feel guilty. Luffy turned his head to avoid the sudden attack of the fist, but his hat was almost knocked off. Fortunately, the rope that Ace had tied to his hat earlier prevented the straw hat from falling off. Don't touch it! My baby! Luffy put the straw hat back on his head and said with a serious expression. How ridiculous! The two pirates holding knives shouted angrily, then raised their knives and slashed at Luffy. Luffy dodged the swinging blade by leaning sideways and punched the pirate's head with his right fist. In an instant, the two pirates with knives were knocked to the ground. Awesome! Nami just happened to see the boy knock down the pirate with his bare hands in order to protect his hat. She couldn't help but laugh out loud and said, he actually beat the guy with a knife with his bare hands. Hey! Who are you? Luffy looked at the girl sitting on the roof and asked puzzledly. I'm a thief who specializes in stealing pirates. My name is Nami, Nami said with a smile, thinking of the boy's skills just now, and invited, how about we work together? A pirate thief? Luffy asked in confusion. That's right, cooperate with me, you will definitely make a fortune. Nami said excitedly. No, I don't want to cooperate with you. Luffy refused, then turned and left. He was hungry. Wait. Nami caught up with the boy and pointed at his straw hat and asked with a smile, what is this hat? You were very angry just now because your hat was almost torn. Is the hat expensive? This is my baby. Luffy put his hand on the hat on his head. Baby. Nami's eyes lit up and she asked excitedly, is there any gem inside? Or a treasure map? You're so annoying. Luffy complained while holding his growling stomach. I'm hungry. How about I buy you something to eat? Nami asked with a smile. She couldn't let the boy wander around a town occupied by pirates alone. Really? Luffy instantly became excited and said excitedly, then let's go. Nami led Luffy along the street and they finally stopped in front of a house. Nami pushed the door open first and went in. Luffy followed closely behind her, walking straight to the kitchen and sitting on the chair at the dining table. Nami turned and walked towards the refrigerator, where she found some sandwiches. As soon as she placed the food in front of him, she was shocked to see that he finished the whole food in one bite. "Why are you here?" Nami asked, looking at the boy in the chair. "I got separated from my crew." Luffy crossed his legs on the chair, then looked at the empty room and asked, "Is this your home?" "No, I'm a wandering thief. This is someone else's home." Nami replied with a smile, "The people in the town have all fled to the suburbs for refuge because they are afraid of Buggy." "Oh, is it that scary?" "This pirate named Nami." Luffy said. "I'm Nami. The pirate's name is Buggy." Nami shouted angrily. She took a deep breath and controlled her anger. She didn't want to hurt this person, but if this guy continued to speak so idiotically, she was not sure if she could hold back. Nami continued, "Baki is a pirate who likes to use cannons, and he seems to have some strange abilities. But why is there no one in this town?" Luffy looked around in confusion. "Didn't I tell you? They are all taking refuge. Did you hear me?" Nami yelled angrily. "Doesn't this guy ever listen to anyone? So you were stealing from empty houses?" Luffy said with a smile. "That's too much. I'm a thief who only steals from pirates." Nami said angrily, "Don't confuse me with those thieves who take advantage of the situation." Nami covered her forehead and said with a headache, "It's so tiring to talk to you." "Oh, don't get too excited, ha ha ha." Luffy smiled indifferently.